Call the meeting to order, that's Kevin, call the roll.
All right, Chair Harry Meyer.
Yep.
Vice Chair Gary Delvaux.
Here.
Jim Bloomreck. Here. Alderman Joe Moore is running late. Melanie Parma.
Here.
Matt Schuler. Here. Tom Weber. Here.
That's for motion to approve the agenda as outlined. So moved. Motion by Jim, second by Tom, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. And the acts for motion on the approval of the minutes that were sent out earlier.
So moved.
Gary, motion by Gary, second by
I'll second that.
Matt. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Communications, old business. Consideration with possible action on communication for June 20th, 2017 to the Common Council by Alderman Dave Nennig on behalf of the Mayor's Beautification Committee that 1.7 acres of the Larson Green property be set aside for historic purposes, a portion of the Fort Howard Stockade Footprint which the city currently owns. Can we refer to staff or what's the?
We did refer to staff. So we took a look at it, and we'll probably be talking a little bit about this more today with the proposed rail yard development agreement. I sent out some information that shows, the initial location of the Fort Howard Stockade, and then overlaid with where that would line up today. I think I sent on the link, there was a Brown County GIS did a kind of a slider, so you can go back and forth and see like exactly where that lines up. So with that, in terms of preserving the original footprint, if you look, the railroad tracks, CN railroad tracks do or would cross over the existing east side. ATC power lines go over the west side. So in terms of preserving, I think that original footprint, while historically, I think trying to get that integrity of where that exactly was, I think it's a good intent, but it just from a practical standpoint, just from our perspective, don't see that as practically happening given the infrastructure that's there in place. The second part that I think we'll talk a little bit more today in terms of the rail yard and that development agreement, and in terms of its relation to history and preserving the history of our city. I think we have a development group that's committed to doing that, and I think they can talk a little bit more about how they would like to do that and how they would cover that. But at this time, allocating a full 1.7 acres on the exact original footprint would not be in the best interest of the RDA, at least that feels at this time. I don't know if Alder Nenning is here and want to talk about that anymore. I think he can discuss a little bit more where his conversation came from. Part of the reason also is in terms of just the 1.7 acres, like that's a big park. And in terms of we, at least citywide, don't have a plan or program right now to maintain, fund, or do anything with that park. My concern would be that we would allocate this land or put off this land, and it would really put a crimp on the development moving forward in terms of we've got this big hole, well, park coming soon, well, that may be coming 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, 15 years, and I think we have in its place right now an opportunity to move forward with the project that still respects the history in a way that gets that done, but also gets the project done.
So you thought we should just refer this to staff now at this time?
So my recommendation for this is just to receive and place on file. I think the time to address this, if we want to talk about it, in the development agreement that's proposed before you today with 2 and 3, there's provision in there that the developer would have to allocate no less than half an acre to historical purposes in that area. So that would be the more appropriate time to discuss it, I think, rather than a separate issue here.
I'd like to hear from Dave.
It's right there.
Well, I brought this forward at the request of members of the Mayor's Beautification Committee, and some of them are here and may want to address it. I don't really have anything else to add to the analysis that Kevin had given.
Do you concur, Dave, with Kevin's outline?
Yeah, I surely understand the rationale here, and in the development agreement, there's still some property being set aside, half an acre, for possible historic development. I know it's not as much as had been requested, but that still is a commitment if the people that have proposed this want to get organized and bring something forward.
Right?
But there are people here who may want to speak on it.
So do we have a motion?
Motion to open?
Yeah, motion, he's indicated that maybe some people want to speak, so sure, you entertain that? You made the motion to open?
No, I didn't. I
You have not?
I have not.
I'll make a motion to open the floor for interested parties.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to open the floor for interested parties who would like to speak on this subject. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, carried. Anyone from the public who would like to, looks like somebody's about to get up.
My name is Jim Sanderson. I'm a member of the Mayor's Beautification Committee, and I first like to point out that when the Walmart situation was going on, and people were saying that Walmart should not be taking the whole area, that it should be open to other development, Walmart basically offered up what was the area of the footprint for elevated development of other parking lot, and people laughed at that, saying, well, that's the most undesirable part of the whole area, and power lines overhead right next to the railroad tracks. So, I mean, 1.7 acres out of the 16 isn't, you know, a majority portion, and I think that the fact that the city of Green Bay currently owns what is the entire west wall of the Stockade Footprint is a very significant historical thing that everyone should really concentrate on, because it not only would be good for the preservation of where everything in this entire area sprang off of, you know, that is basically probably the most historical piece of ground in a very giant area of this part of the country, basically. I mean, that area represents what allowed the European migration of this area. But that aside, I think that leaving that there would actually be a good focus for private development that could go in there. I personally believe the city should retain ownership of that area and use it for government purposes. But, you know, since that doesn't seem to be floating very well, I mean, I think a expanded police station, one of those warehouse buildings would be a great thing. But preserving the entire west wall of the stockade could be a catalyst for a theme for the area. I mean, if the area going toward Dousman is considered the rail yard, and we're talking about the area over by Mason Street being the shipyard, the theme of that area there could be focused on the stockade. I mean, the area could be considered stockade green, or you could focus on the area of the wall, saying West Wall Commons, something that actually puts emphasis on the footprint. As far as maintaining the footprint, if the majority of the area was planted up in what's considered native wildflowers and stuff, it would have very low maintenance in the area. But I think everyone should really consider the fact that Green Bay is known for not caring about its history. The thing that people always bring up to me, which is amazing, 30 years after Cops Restaurant was taken out, people still talk about it. And if you want to find pieces of Cops Restaurant, go out to Alloway. The Village Grill has most of the booths. There's, I think, one or two of them in storage at Neville. You can go up to Sturgeon Bay. There's a candy shop that has about 3 of them up there. It's like everybody else cares about our history besides Green Bay. That we're known for that. This is basically Green Bay's last chance to show that we do care about our history. And this piece of history, Cops Restaurant only goes back 100 years. We're talking about a historical area that, you know, originates from 200 years ago. I mean, everything that we are basically sprang off that area, like I said before. So, you know, it's right now it's either, you know, now or never. You know, I mean, the whole focus of this area for many years is Fort Howard this, Fort Howard to that. And when they put that stone over by Titletown Brewery in 1909 by the Green Bay Historical Society, they, at that time, could not point out literally to people where the stockade had been, because 50 years earlier is when the railroad came. And they just put those surveyor's coordinates on that plaque so people could imagine where it is. Well, now you can actually see where a good portion of the fort was. And I think we should appreciate and focus on something they didn't have 100 years ago. And you know, we have an opportunity here that if we pass up on it, I think people are going to be talking about this in a lot of ways. They still talk about Cops Restaurants. So I think, Green Bay has an opportunity to zero in on the exact spot that everybody else seems to focus on out in Ashwaubenon and every place else about Fort Howard this, Fort Howard that. We have it, we own it, we should appreciate it, not squander it away. When they built the railroad yard, we needed a railroad in Green Bay. Everybody at that time was focused on trying to get a railroad to come to town. Okay, the railroad came to town, they took it over the spot, but they knew the significance of the area. They had a surveyor out of Chicago do extensive surveying work to document where everything was, and the railroad even left an elm tree standing amongst the railroad tracks that had been in the stockade. So even the railroad knew about the importance of it back then. I think we should learn from what people felt about it back then, and we should act on it now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else?
Lynn Austin, 1449 Morrow Street. I would echo what Jim said. I'm on the Mayor's Beautification Committee. And when Dr. McIntosh, who was our historian, asked me if I would assist him on our committee studying what are our most historic areas and trying to preserve those, I agreed. When Dr. McIntosh dropped off because he was ill, Paul Hartman asked me if I would then take over as historian. And I told Paul the first thing I'll do is I'm going to look for our most valuable historic spots within the city. Traditionally, those are the things that are oldest. And I found two very, very historic spots, which I began to do very thorough research on. One is the oldest documented cemetery in the state. That's near our water department and the fire station. And the other one, of course, is the Fort Howard site. 4 Indian tribes, 4 Great Lakes Indian tribes had villages on that property. And they're very interested in that history. I know they would come to visit if we had something, dedicated to that history. When people go up to Door County, rarely do they ever pull off the highway and come into Green Bay because we don't have something unique here that no one else has. This would be something like that. I spoke with the National Park Service. They said some of their best national parks were, the ideas just came from regular people. She said, like citizens like you. She said the government doesn't come up with these good ideas. She said people do. They get a grassroots movement, and she said, and then the federal government comes in and makes it a national park. And I had called her, she was the director of the Midwest Division, and I had called her to say, is there a limit on the size that is required to have a national park? And I said, I would like to see a national park in my downtown. And I explained to her about the fort site, and I explained that we have one existing fort building still in pretty good condition, not far away where it was moved to. And I said, if we moved that building back onto the site, would that qualify as a federal national park? And she said, oh my goodness, she said, this is a brilliant idea. And she said, we don't really have things like that in the Midwest. And I told her the building goes back to 1830. It's the oldest building in Green Bay. The owner is willing to sell it for a reasonable price. He's really behind wanting to see it moved over, to the property. And we would put our archive in there. Our long-term goal was to create a national Indian and Métis research museum. So we've been getting donations over the years, and we have what we need to set up a museum like that already. And we're looking for a place for it. So I contacted Wisconsin Coastal Management, Mr. Freeze, who's their director, and I said, would they like to partner with us if the city set aside the land for what they owned of the stockade? Would Wisconsin Coastal Management give us one of their access building grants, and he said yes. I asked him how much would the maximum that they could give us. He said $120,000. They're having their meeting at the Neville Wednesday of this month, the 23rd, and he also really encouraged me because the city of Green Bay hasn't really done anything for the Wisconsin Fox Parkway, that historic parkway. We have nothing to offer them because we built up over, our history. This would be a huge, probably one of their best things on that whole parkway. And it would bring a lot of people into the city that normally would never come here. When my daughter and I go to Chicago to the National Archives there, and there's another archive we go to, we'll go and stay 2 weeks. That's pretty common when people come to an archive. And of course, when they're there, they're having to go to restaurants and have a motel and all of those expenses. And I've run into, at one of the archives in Chicago, an author she's a professor, she was staying 6 months. So that's not uncommon if you were working on a book. Well, these would be people who aren't going to cause trouble in our city. They're not going to get drunk. They're serious academic people. They would kind of help stabilize that area over there, which I hate to say it, but I passed out to Randy Scannell's committee that we're noted as the drunkest city in America. And I think really we should do something to turn that around. That is a shameful thing. This would be a wholesome, family-friendly, non-drinking establishment for that area. And I think it would really be a wise opportunity. Mr. Dean from the Cochran family, for the last 2 years, they've generously given us $80,000 to continue our website. And I asked them, would you guys help us if we do this archive? And he said, if he saw that other people from the community, like I said, like the city of Green Bay, cared about the history, then they would join in too and help. And this, next year is the 200-year anniversary of Brown County. We have nothing as the biggest city in Brown County to really offer them concerning their history. Like the museum is Brown County, the library is Brown County. The city of Green Bay, we don't have a little city museum. All these other little towns all around us, they all have their little museums. We have nothing. And it's about time that we actually got in the game. And, this would be, again, something huge that we could say as the city of Green Bay, here, we care about Brown County history, we care about our history, we're part of Brown County, and I just think it would be very responsible.
I just have one question. You mentioned a building that you could move on there. What building?
It's, the address is 410 to 414 Maple Avenue, and the owner, it was the surgeon's quarters. Yeah, North Maple. It was the surgeon's, okay. And he's totally behind us doing this and putting that archive in there, so.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll be brief. Jim ORourke. I'm on the Mayor's Beautification Committee also. We've been working on this project for about 7 years, since 2010. I'm on several different history organizations, but what's most important is that you retain your sense of place. The origin of Green Bay really is at that fort. We do have bird's eye maps from 1867 that show the location of the building, really give you a sense of our origin there right after the Civil War. And so what I'd like to propose is that if only a half acre of the 3 acre original fort site is still available, that the developers hire Neville Museum to continue with the ground penetrating radar, find the foundation stones from the various buildings. They're available, we know where to look. You would know what the buildings would actually look like by looking at what's up at Heritage Hill. So it's a very straightforward. Neville has all the equipment they need. They have some specialists, they're archaeologists. Kevin Cullen is very good. So I would suggest that the next step would be to hire Neville to do the ground penetrating radar right away, find out where the building locations were, and see if it fits into the development plan.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alderwoman Orphan M on the Mayor's Beautification Committee, and I know this is a project that Lynn has been working on for a very long time. I do want to voice some concerns that I have. I want us to be aware that if we do move the building and we do make it into this kind of museum, there will be cost to that for the upkeep, for ensuring that it is taken care of. Someone will have to clean the bathrooms and have to heat the building, and water will have to go to that building. And I don't want to be the I don't know, whatever you call that, but the party pooper here. But I believe the land in that area is quite valuable, and I was less concerned about the quarter-acre request. I am more concerned about the 1.7-acre request. So, but I know it is a very heartfelt project that Lynn has brought forward, and she's done lots of work, and I don't want to take away from that. I do want to offer this little different view of what I think of the project, as I am on that committee as well.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? As for motion, return whatever. Forward, yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Solway, and I'm coming up with a different idea for the property here. And that is because, as well as the history of the Indians and the British and the fort and so on, well, for over almost 150 years, it's been the site of the railroad yard, And this is very historic because it's the site of the very first railroad yard and the very first roundhouse in Green Bay. And that came in November of 1862 during the Civil War. And if you look at some of the old maps there, as other people mentioned, you can able to see that in the northern area, that's where the roundhouse was, where they repaired the steam engines. And then afterwards, they got bigger steam engines, they moved to North Green Bay. But one thing I'm proposing is to level the area and put some of the tracks back in, and perhaps possibly even move the National Railroad Museum over here. Because what would be more appropriate than to have the historic station, Titletown Brewery, and the historic trains right next to it. And we could take the property there and lay down sections of track. And at the museum, we have trains from the 1890s, 1920s, 1930s, 1950s. And so you can put all those there and put them in a line. And then also, I have another proposal here in my material that shows that we could take other train cars and make them into luxurious hotel rooms. And those would be for people who would want to have a special getaway. And also, on another side track, we could have a number of cabooses, because everyone's always wanted to go into caboose and spend the night there. And so this would be a way to have the historic trains by the historic buildings in the historic section of downtown Green Bay. And also, if we can't get the National Railroad Museum over here, I'm proposing another idea. And that would be to have a Wisconsin State Railroad Museum. I see I've got a book here called The Tourist Trains, and there's over 400 trains all around America. And the Railroad Museum last year just celebrated its 60th anniversary. Well, from our place and barely about half a dozen others has grown this entire industry. It's one of the biggest growth industries in tourism. And so now you have trains that start in some town and they go out to another place. And it isn't just really a back and forth tour, but on one train like the Arizona, the Grand Canyon Railroad, that actually provides a vital transportation service. And it also saves on the energy and gas and so on. Okay, and so there are a number of states that do have their own state museum. And one of the biggest is right here in the Midwest, down in Illinois, kind of up between Chicago and Rockford. the Illinois Railway Museum. It's all run completely by volunteers. They have over 450 engines and cars, and they have a 4-mile mainline track. And they've also been used in a number of movies. So this would be a good way to combine the history of the thing with some commerce that'll bring the historical aspect into this area. And then also in my other information here, besides the Railroad Museum or the Wisconsin State Railroad Museum, this will also be an opportunity to bring Amtrak passenger trains back, because we've been trying to get Amtrak trains back here for 46 years, ever since the Chicago Northwestern 400 stopped on Friday, April 30th, 1971. And one of the reasons we want to get Amtrak back is, of course, for the Packers, because the Packers are the only team in the NFL with no Amtrak service. So this would be a good way to put 1,000 fans on the train and take them down to Chicago. And then also, by using some of the other engines and cars I found for sale, we could actually have a dinner train in the evening. And this would be a very nice place to start, because the people could go into the station or the restaurant and get their evening cocktails, then get on the train, and depending on what route we could take, for instance, we could go eastward over here to Bellevue in Denmark, and then reverse and come back, and be about a 3 or 4 hour trip. But one of the proposals of a dinner train like this, starting at this location, would be that we would use fresh, organic Wisconsin produce. So just imagine that fresh Wisconsin Angus beef and the vegetables and everything, sort of right on the train. So you're watching the changing scenery of Wisconsin as you're going past. So I thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. And if you have any more questions, I have some further information back here.
Thank you.
Make a motion to go back to regular order of business.
Second.
We have a motion and seconded to return to regular business. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Somebody got a good idea here?
Well, I don't think we make any motions until we hear what 2 and 3 have got to say in regard to what part of that property could be
Yeah,
historical purposes.
I think there's some value there.
But at this point, though, we just want to place this on file. If we're going forward with the other part of the development, this is something we want to come back to at a later time of day. We can certainly do that, so I don't make a motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Tom, second by Jim, place the the subject on file. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Kevin, would something like this be part of the planning's option for that property?
So, 2 things, and we can discuss as we get into the development agreement here. One, I think as I mentioned, the development agreement as presented requires the developer to allocate 1/2 acre
Right.
for its historical purposes. That suffices for the needs here, I think, and the developer, I won't speak on their behalf, it's indicated that, look, they respect the history, both, of the fort and of the rail yard. They're calling it the rail yard. And we'll work to integrate those things in there, and then they could probably maybe attest a little bit better to what some of the ideas that they have for that.
So it could be worked in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, look, as it's kind of approached, the developer has said, that they're open, willing to working
Right.
with other interested parties in terms of preserving that history.
Okay. Under new business, number 2, consideration of possible action on development agreement with GDL Holdings LLC for the railroad project of 420 and 520 North Broadway, parcels 51756 and 51757.
All right, so we are talking about the rail yard again. Basically the area north of Kellogg Street. I emailed out the proposed development agreement and continuing guarantee. Right now, I think we're just talking about number 2. I don't know if you want to take both of these up at the same time. Chair, if you would like to also, can we also take up 3 at the same time since they're interrelated? So also put agenda item number 3 on the table.
Make a
Okay,
motion to take
number-
items 2 and 3 together.
Number 3 then is consideration of possible action on the continuing guarantee limited with Hometown Bank for the railroad project 520 North Broadway.
All right, so what I'd like to do, and just in terms of mechanics, the development agreement will be a tri-party agreement between DDL Holdings, the developer, the Redevelopment Authority, and the City of Green Bay. So we'll be looking for approval of that document here today. Number 3, as far as the approval of the continuing guarantee, that guarantee will actually be held with the city, so we will be looking for a recommendation from RDA on that one.
Oh, go to city council then?
To the
Is
city,
that-
correct.
okay.
Both of these go to the city. The RDA will not be a party to number 3 because the city's going to be the one liable, but we would like a recommendation here that the city would support it. I think what I'd like to do is go through, discuss these, I think get into a little bit more detail about the development agreement. We do have closed session language on here. I think that would be appropriate a little bit to talk about the guarantee in terms of what was sent out. I think there's one material, one term that we're still negotiating a little bit that would like some discussion or direction from RDA from before we bring that to City Council next week. But otherwise, the parties feel that in good faith, we have reached a spot with the development agreement to move this project forward. With that, I'd just like to highlight a little bit, kind of in the memo, the main points of this. I think the developer is here. They would like to speak and provide just some context about, what they've done about this project. And I think they brought some of their team with them as well to kind of get an overview of what are we talking about here. And with that, kind of take questions along the way. They can answer more about, the proposed development. I can answer more about, the finances or, proposed terms and conditions.
Just one
that are
question,
shared.
how long have we had a relationship with the GDL?
Quite some time. I mean, when did they first start acquiring? I mean, if you talk, Brent Weicker and his team, moving into Titletown, going back all the way to 1996. In terms of really being kind of one of the first investors in the resurgence of downtown. In terms of the development agreement for the other Larson buildings, A, B, C, and D, I think that was before I got here, 2013?
Yeah, about 3 years ago.
A number of years ago.
Right, and it is for this particular project, ever since I came on board, we've been discussing about how we continue what we've done south of Kellogg, north of Kellogg. So it's definitely been an ongoing relationship, and we'd like to continue that with them. So in short, basically DDL is going to serve as the master developer for those more or less 16 acres north of Kellogg Street. That is property that right now the RDA owns. That is property that we acquired deed in lieu of foreclosure when OBI defaulted on their obligations. We were left holding the bag for the financial obligations. But with that, we were able to secure the property and have been working to get that developed and move forward with some type of integrated development on that parcel. Right now, as proposed as part of this development agreement, and I think just it's important to look at, this is going to be a process where we're going to have additional projects come back to the Redevelopment Authority for approval. But really, this gets it started by, one, providing for a purchase and sale of the land, and 2, getting 2 projects off the ground. And setting up with that kind of a conceptual plan of how we develop and how we continue projects moving forward. As part of this first project, we're going to be talking about, there's 3, it looks like 2, but there's really 3 additional warehouse buildings to the north, 100,000 square feet total. We're calling those buildings R, S, and T. R and T are the big ones, about 50,000 square feet apiece. Continuing to do what they've done south of Kellogg and converting those into primarily office space, perhaps some retail, perhaps some residential on the T building. Again, developer will talk a little bit more about that. Constructing 20 new owner-occupied townhome units on the eastern edge of the parcel nearest the railroad tracks. And then also working to construct the public improvements necessary to serve these. So we've talked about the extension of Kellogg Street into the property, kind of that Grand Boulevard, that big entrance, extension of Donald Driver Way north into the property, and then also extension of Bond Street. I think with that, and developer can speak more on this, one of their goals is, in making this a destination, really also to integrate features and amenities that are very attractive to businesses. So, talking about making sure there's access, to high-speed internet, but also kind of about feeling too much. What's the next thing? We went from 3G to 4G to what's next in line in terms of making sure it's not 5G. I already guessed that. What's next in terms of technology? Making sure as we build this, we're we're building the infrastructure to outfit really kind of the next generation of workplaces and residences. So with that, in the development agreement, there's a concept plan, and again, I said some of the public street extensions, what we're requiring that, these are going to be complete streets, so they've got facilities for all. We want to make sure that we're going to be bringing people here and putting people here. We've got great accommodations for pedestrians and bicyclists moving around. And then in there, also the note about the half acre, which shall be reserved for educational recreational purposes related to Fort Howard. And I think it's important we did note that it is talking about, Fort Howard in this. With that, in terms of getting the project forward and providing financial assistance, we've talked before, the old Larson Green for it's a little bit unique in that TID is in and of itself kind of one property. I mean, it's a parcel from Dallasman all the way north to NEW Shelter, almost to Mather Street, from Broadway to the railroad track. So, in terms of what we talk about increment and developing that increment, if this goes through, DDL will probably own about 95% of the land in total within the TID itself. Maybe back out a little bit, take out Titletown over there. But because Titletown is primary investor in DDL, you kind of look at it as one and the same. With that, the proposed TIP incentive that we've negotiated and then putting out there today for recommendation, kind of three parts. One, right now is a project grant of $2.1 million. That project grant is listed in the development agreement for qualified expenditures related to infrastructure and moving forward with building out that infrastructure, including some environmental remediation. Proposing a structure for future project grants where the developer agrees to create $1 million worth of increment, and in return for that $1 million, the city would put forth another $100,000 into the same type of projects or qualified expenditures. And the third piece is for those projects, after the increment covers the debt service, anything over and above that is a pay-go split, 50% to the developer, 50% to the TID. I think it's also important to note that part that's going back to the TID, look, we're going to be closely intertwined with DDL in terms of moving forward of how that's used, as they comprise most of the TID of itself. And so whether that's used for additional infrastructure enhancements or other incentives, that's something that will be discussed as future projects come forward. Right now, and in terms of projected increment, the base value is 0 because we own it. But if we were to put it on the tax rolls of a loose assessment, or basically what we need to do is establish that base value of $3.9 million. And the reason that it's 3.9, the property, if you assessed it today, is probably closer to 3. But that base value reflects what is left in that TID of base value to allocate. So if someone's allocated for projects initially, that 3.9 is what's left over. So if they're taking the rest of the TID, that is where we're starting at the base value. So it's a little bit higher than probably what is assessed, and I think, look, the developer understands where that is. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I guess in terms of what that base value is. So there's a little bit of a challenge in terms of, look, I mean, you kind of got to make up that $1 million to start hitting where increment matches up with assessed value. With that, we anticipate that projecting over the next few years, the developer will be required, and I think this is laid out on page 5, in terms of minimum aggregate assessed values. That'll need to hit $8 million by January 1, 2020. That's assuming projects get started in this year and start to become fully online by that time. And then some other checkpoints all the way up until $16 million January 1st, 2024. With that, hitting those checkpoints, that enables us to basically pay the debt service on the project grant that is here for you today. Those values, I feel, and can dig into them a little bit more, I feel were constructed pretty conservatively. We're using values in terms of the office space of what it's priced out now in the current buildings south of there. And again, the sale price of the townhome units, those will ultimately dictate the assessment. But estimating those 250 to 275. We feel it's a comfortable price point that it's realistic in terms of where they're going to come in. I think they probably will come in higher, but I think just for purposes of estimating. With that, all those projects coming in phased over a period of 5 years. I think we'll see those done more quickly, but look, I'm estimating it's going to take 5 years to do. That will be adequate to suffice the debt service on this. Developer understands that, look, if you get those projects done, either A, more quickly, or B, they go higher in value, that's more incentive then in terms of the pay-go coming back to you. So, in a nutshell, that is the development agreement. There's a second piece that the lender to the developer, Hometown Bank, is requesting the city provide a continuing guarantee. They will be making a loan to DDL in order to purchase the property. They're requesting that the city, in essence, guarantee that loan for $2.6 million. That is a separate item that will be, again, we'd like a recommendation from RDA. Ultimately, council will decide on that. There's one, I guess, item that we're still trying to discuss. I think we're in the same terms or concept of how we want to handle that. It's just the mechanics and legal and banking financial language of how to get that done, which we'd like probably to discuss in closed session about how to get that done. But the guarantee is also attached. We can go into that a little bit more. But I think, look, it's such a big project, complicated project, maybe just bite enough pieces at a time, and maybe to go through the development agreement first. If you have any specific questions on the agreement itself, I can answer those. If not, then we can work and have the developer talk a little bit and provide a presentation on what they plan on doing here.
The $2.6 million in the guarantee, so I assume then that is what the sale price of the property is, $2.6 million?
That is correct.
And we've got a assessed value for the purposes of the development agreement of 3.9, so they're at 2/3. Purchase is at 2/3 of assessed value. Whether actual assessed value would probably come out at 3 million or not?
Close. The base value is 4 million. If you assess this out, and this is using numbers from our assessor's office based on the price of a square foot, if this just went back on the tax rolls today, it would be assessed at about 3 million, 3.1. So the reason that the base value, we didn't allocate base value maybe as much as we should have to some prior projects, so we have to make up for it. Now, that's the difference. So, but if you, base value is 4, if you assessed it today, it's probably 3. The purchase price is 2.6. With that, part of the obligation is that they will dedicate Kellogg Street, well, which is already there, but Donald Driver Way and Bond Street to us. So in terms of, that's about 2.2 acres that we would otherwise probably have to purchase or somehow negotiate to get that public street. So in terms of the price per acre, we feel if you added those back in, it comes right out to about that 3.1.
That's all, thank you.
Anything else?
We could, and that's something we talked about, public street versus private street. If we have public right-of-way, it makes it easier to do some of the owner-occupied and land divisions in terms of if it's all in a PUD, then really the only option is condos. And they would like to have the ability to have some streets be on a public frontage, so you could actually have like a townhome where you own fee simple ground to ceiling.
What are maybe I should reserve this when the gentlemen come up, the chances, again, we're talking residential right here. So how far down the road do we go before the request is to abandon that for office space?
No, I think they're very real and probably the most real that I've seen, both in terms of the product, the price point, and the actual, I guess, customers or clients they have requesting this type of product, willing to, if this moves forward, sign orders, sign a commitment or put money down rather to move forward with it.
On the 20 owner-occupied townhomes, is that what you're asking? How sure is that?
Yes.
Okay, I think.
Well, not just townhomes, condo development as well.
Okay, they can answer that.
Any other questions? We have motion to open the meeting of public discussion. Motion, second by Pat. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. All right.
Krista? Yeah, I'm gonna pull up some slides. Yep.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. We've been working really hard on this behind the scenes for 2 years. There's been a lot of work done on behalf of DDL and partnering with the city. And we're just really excited to carry the momentum that we've created in the buildings that we purchased 4 years ago and bring that to the 16 acres. Those 16 acres, if you recall, they've been empty for 15 years. And I think there's been a couple attempts to do some development there. And again, we think that we have a proven track record and have some momentum going, which I'll explain a little bit, that we're really excited about this. So before I start and make a few remarks, I'd like to introduce, we brought a team of people here to answer questions for you if you'd like. We have John Leroy from Mao & Associates. He's the civil engineer and an urban planning specialist. We have Jim LaPlante, our architect for the townhomes. Tim Bino, both John and Jim are going to make presentations, by the way. Tim Bino is here from Hometown Bank. He's the partner that secured the financing or supporting the financing for the site acquisition. We have Robert Seal from Investor Community Bank, who we're working on with the financing on Building R. We have Sandra Rank, who's a residential real estate professional that's here that is interested in doing some residentials in Building T, and she'll say a few words. Also, Katie Hess from Big Brothers Big Sisters. They've had a LOI for Building R for the last year that we've been working on with them. We also have Paul Belschner, who's the president and CEO of Base Companies and one of the partners in DDL Holdings, and Brent Weicker, the president of Titletown Brewing Company, who is also one of the partners in DDL Holding. So again, there's some, also to mention, there's some collateral on the table with some site plans and some drawings as well. I just want to make a few noteworthy points before I turn it over to John and Jim. A couple things to keep you up to speed on what's been happening over the last 2 years. If you recall, early this March, we renamed the area the Rail Yard. We thought it was more than just Titletown Brewing Company and the buildings that we purchased a few years ago. We needed a handle for that district. We thought it reflected the history of the area, so we aptly named it the Rail Yard, reflecting back on our history. But we also want to look forward. And several of us have been involved with the strategic plan for the Chamber of Commerce, and we know that the next generation of jobs is going to need innovation. So we need to create this innovation district, entertainment, light manufacturing, residential, and multi-use. And again, we want to carry that forward into the 16 acres. The second point I want to make is, many of you may recall that back in December of 2013, Governor Walker signed the historic tax renovation credits, and DDL Holdings was the first application in, the first contract approved by the state, and we put that money to good use here. That program was so successful statewide, it went on moratorium. This is an important part. We were the only group that was granted a carry forward with those historic tax credits. So we can bring those tax credits into buildings R, S, and T on the 16 acres. So we will have that available to us as well. I want to talk a little bit about technology. We have, on the second floor of Building C, we've built a nonprofit tech co-working space called T2 Accelerator. And this is a co-working space very popular in bigger cities, old warehouses, and it's a place where young professionals, that next generation of workers, can come hang their hat, that have the use for high-speed fiber. We've partnered with several people in the area, and we've brought a 10 gig high-speed fiber pipeline into the building, and it's already operational. So we're all set, ready to go. That's going to be available throughout the entire campus. So we have that working. We're working with Insight as well to develop an innovation and a technology structure for the whole infrastructure for the whole campus. The other part that I would like to talk to you about is the strategic plan for the Chamber of Commerce. As I mentioned, several of us were involved in that, and there are 11 initiatives that the group came up with that we're trying to align ourselves and make sure that we're moving in the same direction as the strategic plan for Northeast Wisconsin. And there's 3 particular initiatives that we feel we're in line with: attract and retain and develop talent, accelerate downtown and urban development, And number 7, build a robust ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship. So we're making sure that everything that we're doing, we're preserving the history, but we're also moving forward to move Green Bay to that next generation. Couple other things of note, just to give you some progress of what has been going on in buildings A, B, C, and D. If you recall, before we purchased those buildings in January of 2014, those buildings had been abandoned for 10 years. We now have approximately 140,000 square feet of active use in a very, very short period of time.
Out of how many?
That's full, pretty much full, about 90-some% full, right? So buildings A and B, which were the first phase, filled up in 13 months. Buildings C and D, we had a 90% commitment while we were through the construction phase, and the first tenants moved in this March. And these are tenants that, again, are based on innovation, technology, and growth, attracting that young professional, again, kind of that next generation of jobs. Some other success traits that we've had, in addition to our brewery, or Titletown's brewery, the Cannery Public Market, our roof tap, the tap room, we have attracted 20-plus businesses to those complexes. Some are new to downtown, some are new to Green Bay. Again, all based on growth. On any given day, there's 200-plus employees and customers coming in and out of those buildings that were abandoned just a very short time ago. And then at night and on weekends, we've become a destination for downtown Green Bay. On any given weekend, you can see thousands of people coming in and out of those buildings to eat, entertainment. We have music occasionally, all the way to big events like the Badger LSU event we did last year, which hosted 10,000 people. So again, this is our success story as far as momentum is concerned. I just wanted to give you guys a feel for that. We do have a pipeline of interested prospects, anywhere from hotel, various forms of residential, multi-use, work owner-based residential, potentially student housing, standalone offices, medical facilities. So again, over the last 2 years, we have been talking to quite a few people, and we're down the road with some of those folks. So just to wrap things up before I turn it over to John, a couple things that have happened over the last 2 years. Our financing is complete. We have several of our partners here that can answer questions for you, so we are ready to go. The engineering for the site is all done. John's going to present some of that information. The design of the townhomes are done. The buildings for drawing R are done and set for city approval. We've worked with WEDC on our WEDC on tax credits and the idle site grant in conjunction with the city. We've worked with Stantec and the DNR on all the environmentals. Those are completed. We've worked with ATC to work on the ability to work under and around the power poles. And then we've also had dialogue with the railroad about some incremental property and strips along the railroad tracks as well. This all came at a significant amount of work, time, money on behalf of DDL, but we're doing this in good faith with the city. The city's been great partners, and we've also had great partners as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John from Mao, and he's going to walk you through some of the site plan.
One question.
Sure.
You really look at, like, say, 2 projects, the warehousing and the vacant land. Are both going to be moving forward at the same time?
Yeah, I think so. Again, we have that momentum carrying forward from buildings A, B, C, and D. We probably have a prospect list of 10 people that want to carry forward, and that's one of the reasons we had Katie here is they've kind of been waiting in the wings to go there. So we've been showing those buildings, and we have people to carry through into Building R, which is the first large building there. And Jim's going to talk about the townhomes, but yeah, the plan is to work down parallel paths and develop it all. The other thing is that we are, and John will show this in his engineering and building the entire infrastructure. And without the roads and the extension of Kellogg Street and Donald Driver Way, really the townhomes can't happen, and access to those other properties can't happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is John Leroy. I'm with Mount Associates. We are land surveyors, engineers, and planners. Last year, we were tasked to lay out the street grid for the neighborhood, and that would allow a mixture of uses and to target an area where townhomes would work well in the area. So we looked at this and went, we want to have a creation of spaces that is great for walkability and connectivity in the area, which would be for a variety of uses for people of all ages and backgrounds. And we want to take advantage of all the space throughout the property, every inch of it. So the first thing we did was look at the we took to the authenticity document, took the cues from there. It's a great document. Wanted to go ahead and see what was projected for the area. So if you look at it, things that are big bullet points from it: green spaces and public spaces, a mixture of uses both commercial and residential, and connecting the neighborhood to the surrounding neighborhood, and have potential to connect the neighborhood past the railroad tracks east over into Lake Park. So we have that in mind, and we have a plethora of challenges to the property. The first biggest one that pops out is the ATC line, 75-foot easement right there. How do we go ahead and make this area where we cannot build underneath it an area that can go ahead and be valuable to the property? With that, we took and went and put down Driver. The roundabout center of it is where the southern pole is at. The second mini roundabout is where the northern pole is at on the property. If you look at what is being referred to as Elmore Commons, this would be where Elmore would project east into the property itself. There's a storm easement that runs there. It's a large one. Goes out towards the river. Can't build in there as well. The area itself lacks a grid. You think urban, you think city, you think grid. There's no grid right here. We want to go ahead and create some sort of grid. We have a long distance between Kellogg and Bond for walkability and the urban scale right there. We want to go ahead and try to make some blocks in there to go ahead and make this be more walkable to the urban scale for folks, and create blocks to go ahead and make fronts of buildings. When we go ahead and use Driver itself as a road, we've now created a narrow, wonky type area where the townhomes are at. It's not square, they're 90 degrees, and we don't have an area to go ahead and put a road in to go ahead and form the blocks. What can we go ahead and do about this? So we're looking at that. We have the environmental challenges. Let's have some inspiration. There are plenty of different projects throughout the country that we can look at that could have visual cues, and one of them that we've been looking at quite a bit is the American Tobacco Campus in Durham, North Carolina. These are some photos. It's a similar project to what we're proposing here. This was an industrial site in the last century, thriving for a while, and then it wasn't. Similar type of buildings to what we have along Broadway, to where they're very flexible in their spaces to go ahead and reuse. Lots of historic value, people like them, people want to be around it. Let's go ahead and make this be our centerpiece of the property itself. So this project down there in Durham started back in the early 2000s, and incrementally over time, it took time to do it. They have built this into a 9-figure type property over the course of time. It is spectacular. The variety of uses down there include restaurants, entertainment, office space, a startup incubator, theater, YMCA, hotel, and a ballpark. We're envisioning things like that here too, and trying to go ahead and create the space to make those things happen. So this is a historic building that's been very adaptable. It's at the heart of the project. But when you look around, there's lots of human scale right here. You see people interacting, being part of it. Cars are hidden, taken away from the area where people can go ahead and actually walk and connect with one another. And this spot is a 24/7 destination. There are folks who go ahead and work there. They're 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, good, well-paying jobs. There are families, there are single people who come out at night, kind of like what we have here, to go ahead and use different types of entertainment. And there are folks who live there as well, who use it all the time as their place to go ahead and live. And it's all on a human scale. So, as I mentioned, we were tasked to go ahead and do townhomes. And so, let's look at some of the ideas that we want to go ahead and try to find that would be similar to this whole idea of a townhome product that is good in an urban, contemporary, historical, industrial feel that could work down here. So we were showing folks different images. In fact, the one on the upper left is from the authenticity plan, and folks like that one the most when we were talking to people. And so we're trying to get a vibe for that for this townhome product we'll be showing up here shortly as to what we're trying to do. And what do these buildings have in common to what we're trying to accomplish? These buildings emphasize good design that bring people to the fronts of buildings. It brings neighbors together. You have, for instance, on these top of these buildings, private space where people can be outside and mingle outdoors. And you have folks that can go ahead and be connected.
The buildings themselves are pretty close to a right-of-way. They're facing towards the street, your parking is in the back. We're trying to go ahead and accomplish that here. Now, when it comes to our site, we have these challenges and the pathways, and that's where, when we go ahead and look at,
I'm gonna I'll let you go with the pathways and
Okay.
get back to that one.
so, this actually, could you go one more? Because this is the commons part here, right here. So, as you see here, we have a layout for some of the townhomes. Now, we want to go ahead and have our townhomes face out to the front, not put our backs towards the river or a street. We've tried that now for the quarter century, where we're trying to go ahead and face our buildings out towards the river, out towards the blocks, not have garages or spaces tucked behind. So what can we go ahead and do in this smaller area where we can't put roads in? We thought the best way to go ahead and note this was to go ahead and create corridors and pathways that act as de facto streets. These are places where people can go ahead and walk and bike down. They're wide enough for that. They're wide enough like a pathway, but they're not an actual road. And the distance between the buildings, kind of what's happening right here, still is not, it's not so close that you feel on top of each other. For instance, the lower left right there, that's about 60 feet from building front to building front. The one on top on the upper right, that's less than what we have here. That's more like 30 feet. We're going more like 60 feet between the fronts of buildings to fronts of buildings in this phase one. And I also wanted to note, as far as the buildings going in the rest of this on the site plan, the only ones that right now are pushing forward for sure are the ones here in phase one as far as townhomes. The rest are placeholders to give an idea as far as scale goes. But these right here, that's what we're trying to go for with the pathway look. Now, we've created these pathways to go ahead and create blocks that are smaller, that people can feel good about walking down and are feeling more urban, not long and suburban. We want to go ahead and chop these up to create more spaces to go ahead and have front yards for folks. So that leads us back to where we have Elmore Commons right here. Now, in a perfect world, Elmore would have kept on going through over the course of the years, but it can't. There's a building there. And so the natural grid pattern of Kellogg, Elmore, Bond, Mather that exists to the west on Broadway stops right here. We want that to keep on continuing because those blocks allow for folks to go ahead and we can have more fronts of buildings. We can have more walkability throughout there. So, as I mentioned, there's a storm easement that runs through here. We want to go ahead and take that area and turn it into a pedestrian pathway, approximately 65 feet wide, which is what you would see down there in the lower left. That's East Campus Mall in Madison. That can go ahead and front buildings onto it. This grid system allows for activation for future property owners, the public at large, and other events. Think putting food trucks right there. Think putting an annex for the farmer's market. People can go ahead and use a space right there. To the east of Down Driver, it also acts as an extra public plaza, or a potential public plaza area to use for the stormwater pond that will need to be on the site. And for instance, just as a placeholder, at the northeast corner of Elmore and Driver, that is the size and shape of the building at 410 to 414 North Maple, the historic building. That's the size of that building right there. If there's potential to go ahead and place that building in that spot, or something similar to it to go ahead and give a nod to the public and the history. So we've created Elmore Commons. Now back to more of the trail itself as well. We have a trail running along the rail system. Like I mentioned, we don't want to turn our backs to the river. We want to go ahead and face back out to it so we can see it. And so we felt we needed to go ahead and do something to go ahead and make an actual legit front yard for folks. And we felt that that trail right there would act in a similar fashion to what is happening over on the east side. And would allow for more connectivity, which is what we're trying to go ahead and do in the area. Also, this would be the first area in the near west side where we'd be dedicating trail space along the riverfront area, which the west side lacks. And hopefully this can go ahead and keep momentum going to having future trails connecting back to this as time keeps on moving into the future. And to note, as far as trails and connectivity, Bond, Down Driver, and Kellogg have dedicated bike space lanes. That bikeability is something that we want to go ahead and encourage here for the younger folks who we're trying to go ahead and attract to the area. That leads to the pond that's on the site. We need to have it. Stormwater pond has to be there for our purposes, and so we want to go ahead and give cues to this pond to make it more than just a pond that's in a in a field. So I want to go ahead and disclaimer, this pond right here, it's in Atlanta, it's called the Clear Creek Basin. It costs $40 million to build. But we want to take inspiration from it, because it's very inspired from it. Try to make the pond itself a lot more of a public asset than just placing a pond with a fountain. So things that we're looking at as far as design-wise goes would be, you see the terracing right there, have terracing that people can go ahead and use it, photos, things of that sort. You look down to the south and the bridge over at Tattletown that leads from the depot back over towards the brewery over on Broadway. Small investment to go to that wetland crossing right there. But how many folks go ahead and take photos, and this is a big part of their wedding day, that they take photos there, they come and show it to it, or just it's a visual cue that says, hey, go from the depot over here to the brewery building, take this path. It's known, you know to go ahead and do it. Simple little act, but it's made a big impression on the folks that this is a place-making place. This is nice. It's not just some wetlands that had to be there. We're trying to do it with the pond as well. So in closing, we looked at this whole site and we had some views here, just right there. So these are views at 10, 20, and 30 feet looking across the river. And we know that's the money shot right there, right? We want to see those photos. We want to see that image across downtown looking back over at the historic depot. But really, what we want to go and create with this plan here is to look back to the west and north and see the rest of the property in a few years and say, that's what I want to be a part of. I want to be part of this neighborhood itself right here and downtown, but the entire rail yard itself. So we believe this plan will facilitate growth over time, which will allow for a mixture of uses, a mixture of land uses. We feel the design allows for flexibility and incremental development to occur over the course of time. We focus on using every last inch of space usable in this plan that will go ahead and attract the new urban pioneers over to this area and start their roots in downtown. And it creates a place where the people of Green Bay can share a created asset and spaces for everyone. So we feel pretty good about this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm Jim LaPlante, the architect of the townhouses. Now, if you haven't figured this out from John's presentation, I've been brought in to do the easy part. Mauer & Associates, you've heard of them forever in this town. To have creative talent, like you just heard, in this town is extremely different for Green Bay. So please be aware of the start of where this process is. Paul Belchner allows me also to be part of this, silly little team. I take credit for a ton of stuff that I don't do. And he's really brought a whole new level of focus, of energy, of creativity. And the shocking thing is he knows everybody. He knows the clients even, okay? So I get to play this game in this, this very creative little field here of some work that I rarely get to do in Green Bay. I've been in this town for 25 years, and I've done so few projects in the city of Green Bay. It's sad, right? This is exciting. This is what my little business was started to be 25 years ago, to do stuff like this. So I'm enthused. Okay, what are my little townhouses doing, and why are they going to be successful? Why are they so well targeted, so well fit to this marketplace? Okay, so again, you saw our inspiration image. Jonathan actually had that long before I ever even got started. Loved it. We've run with it. We've also run with clients. We are actually working with very specific clients in the development and design. But the things that you saw in inspiration images that are still carrying forward: brick buildings, 2 colors of brick that you'll see, modern panels of siding, raised front porches. Why the raised front porches? Because it's still Green Bay, it's still downtown, it's still old school, but then it also starts to buy us some advantages. It buys us lower level windows. So now basements. I'm serious. We're going to do basements in our townhomes. That is expendable space. And then, of course, we go back to Jonathan's statement of the money shot. Well, we're still doing glass railings on roof decks. So we're really looking at every angle that we can come up with value for these townhomes. Okay. How do you deal with garages? How do you deal with the practicality of Green Bay? We still have mostly two-stall garages. We have smaller alleys again. So again, the fronts of the buildings are turned, kind of backwards as it may be. But we have dealt with accessibility. We have dealt with garages. We have dealt with all of the stuff we really want these people to have, right? We want them to have the kayaks and the bikes. And if they're going to live here, we are anticipating that's going to be the case. All right, simple amenities. Two-story living spaces, many two-story dining spaces, lofts, kitchens with pantries. Actually, there's a 3-level staircase flying through some of these units because, again, we're utilizing the lower level as a semi-exposed space. Some of the options are atriums, fireplaces, fully accessible on the first floors of these units, and you will see that many have, or almost all have, first floor master bedrooms, so they truly are fully accessible. The second floor then becomes more of your bedrooms, private space, that cool roof deck, a larger laundry room, and then somewhere in the options area, again, we can start doing fun things with these roof decks. Could we even take them up a whole nother floor and do a third floor lookout? Can we do kitchens up there? There's obviously pretty unlimited possibilities. Now, of course, that's depending where your budget lands, and I can work with budgets. That's not the issue. So we still then jump back down to the lower level. Unfinished basement space, mechanical space, storage space, kayaks, whatever we want to talk about. Just expandable space, right? Cheap space. That way we can keep our costs down from day one, but yet allow flexibility. Offices, studies, don't know where else we could go with it. All these things could be added in. So, my point here is, you saw the inspiration. I was given this fantastic deck of cards that all I do is get to play. And we really have talked with our potential clients already. And I think we got something that's just so far different, but not to the point of being ridiculously different that we just outpriced ourselves and we're a dream. This is practical. This is going to get done. You're going to get done. So, thank you.
I want to hit on hip roofs real quick. Some people might think of flat roofs, Joe, any inspiration, and tie that into the depot, please?
Well, there's numerous things that I'm still playing games with, right? So you're going to see pitched roofs on our buildings. How come we're doing pitched roofs when most of the time you're going to see more of that modern aesthetic in the flat roofs? So yes, we did choose the hip roofs on our buildings. Very practical, right? An asphaltic shingle is as practical as get, but then we turn it backwards on ourselves. We then have those expansive roof decks for roof terraces above garages and different spaces, and actually they're on multi-levels. So it's playing games with the aesthetic of what you would think for a residence, but yet it's not trying to be too modern, nor certainly not trying to be too old. Is that where you're going with it?
This is Sandra Rank, who's a real estate professional, and she has been actively gauging the market for building T for some residential on the existing buildings.
Well, I just got asked here yesterday, so I'm going to be quick and brief. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and everybody in this room. We've all been working really hard to be standing at this point in time, and I'm really excited. My involvement with Brent and Paul and John and Josh has been on this focus of the last building with an ownership opportunity with urban living. So all this other stuff you're doing is news to me, and it's It's amazing. It's awesome. I had a client the other day that we were downtown and she said to me, "Oh my God, Green Bay is finally a city." I'm like, amen, yes it is. So anyway, my contribution here today would be to let you know that there's definitely a very strong need for urban warehouse type housing. And we've, so far on this project, what we've done has got together a focus group of about 15 different people from different segments of our community to talk about wants and needs, what they would like, what they wouldn't like, hopes, dreams, what they would like that to look like. And to Jim's point, the point of what we're trying to do isn't to be shocking and super urban and all of that. It's to be about what does our community need, what's the best fit and highest use of these buildings. One of the interesting answers to the questions that Paul and Brent had when we were first sitting down was, we were talking about, do you rent, do you own, what are people looking for? And my question to them was, what are you motivated by? Profit, risk, where are you at on the scale? And their answer was, we're motivated by what works best for our community and what makes this development the most layered approach to our community that will be the long-range benefit. So that was a great answer. So we did the focus group, and then we also met with an architect out of the Madison area that does projects like this all over actually a couple of different states in the Midwest, about the feasibility of the building. And all of that research isn't back yet, but the preliminary stuff is very, very positive. So does anybody have any questions for me at all that I can answer specifically?
You haven't got into price points yet or anything?
We talked about price points. So what we talked about is we kind of worked backwards from square footage. And one of the thoughts that's on the table, and I'm at liberty to share. Okay, what we had talked about was not doing finished units, but doing shell units, because one of the things that we hear that people want is they want their own way to do it. They don't want one way to do it. So the square footage we had talked about was 1,000 square feet to maybe 2,500, 3,000 square feet. And those shell price points could be anywhere from 125, 150, 350, 400.
Okay.
So then people can take it, finish it however to the level that they would want to do it. Many people in this area are very private and don't really want everybody knowing what they have in their units. So.
You would finish it out about 35, 40, finish out the spaces, $35 a square, or what do you?
Well, that would be depend on what level of amenity they want.
No, I understand, just a general mid-range.
Well, I think our goal was to have it be approachable to all ranges, so that if you wanted to have just a small space, if you wanted to have a big space, if you wanted to have a family, if you didn't want to have a family, we wanted to have options so that it had a broad-based appeal for a wide range of demographics.
But I can finish it out to a mid-grade at $35 a square.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
It's exciting.
I don't know if you wanted just one more thing, just to kind of touch on the building itself and the transformation of the warehouses. Just I think, akin to what's been going on in the building itself.
I don't know, Josh, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah.
These are the three facade images, right? I don't know if you have all three of them in there, Kevin, but
Yeah.
the top is what the buildings look like today. This is what we call R, S, and T. Is this just R, or is this R, S, and T? Star.
Yeah, it's just R there basically, and what we're gonna do is.
So what it looks like today.
Yep, what it looks like today, and then the picture down below is basically we're taking out the window openings for that, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep that 4 to 6 foot piece of masonry that's in between it, but open it up from floor to ceiling on each floor in that specific building to bring in all that natural light, just like we did in those buildings to the south of Kellogg there.
This is the west view, so this is what you'll see standing on Broadway. And then I can put in also the east view, what you'll see from the interior, same.
Which is real similar there, and then we'll have a common walkway from one end of the building to the other, kind of a hallway, kind of like where the loading dock system is right now. We're gonna open that up with some garage doors and stuff like that, and have that metal siding on the outside to bring that urban feel back down to that area there. Activating the rooftops as much as possible and stuff.
Are you gonna have parking inside the building?
We will have some underground parking in Building R. The layout in Building S and T is a little bit compact to make the corners with regular sized vehicles, but maybe in years to come, the autonomous vehicles will fit well in there.
Are these serviced only by staircase, or these are 3-story units roughly?
This particular portion of the building would be 3 to 4 stories. It'll be elevators, and there's a freight elevator, and there's stairways for everything too. Private elevators for the residential portions of the project too, so.
There's full sets of plans on the table in those packets, Josh, up there. Three levels above grade, 19,200 square feet per floodplain. And then the building to the north of this building R is the building T. There's a little S connector piece where Elmore Commons cuts through, but that's the one that Sandra's working on.
Okay. I just couldn't read the writing, even with my...
Thank you, Josh.
And is the thought here that building R will be all office or retail, and T is all residential?
That's the current thought. If we don't address residential soon, we're gonna be out of existing historic warehouse buildings. So we're taking a sincere run at residential in building T. The office demand is clearly rolling to the north. We have a better pipeline for building R than we've had for A, B, C, or D.
So, Paul, I don't know if you heard my question to the mayor earlier. How soon after you go do we start revising the residential back to office? Because that's been the historical nature of everything that we improve in this committee.
Yeah, that's a great question, and my job is to put buildings in service. If somebody gives us incentives to use to do that, I'm gonna work with the client and market in front of me and try to, as long as it fits our acceptable clients and market. And that's exactly what happened with C and D, right? At one time, we were thinking of multifamily or residential there. The office demand just had such a head of steam, we had to keep moving, or we would have lost all that momentum. We actually, right now, are running the risk of losing office demand in building R for folks like Katie's group that have been kind of sitting out there for quite some time waiting for office demand. I can just tell you we're taking a sincere approach to looking at building T as residential. I can't promise that it doesn't turn into office.
Not the answer I was looking for. I know.
Well, I think we're gonna have 5 or 6 different types of residential within this 15.77 acres. The one that you're referring to would be existing warehouse residential. I understand where you're coming from, Tom.
I think, Commissioner, one of the things we can also discuss, if we do go in a closed session, just where we and the parties have gotten with additional negotiations with other parties, and then the types of products that they would be offering, and then where kind of those are at in the queue, and then timeliness of coming back here for approvals.
Yeah, I think you asked a really good question. We've asked them a lot, and I think you're looking for owner-occupied housing in the downtown, right? That's the gist of your question. And I think Kevin talked about there may be a couple other products that will complement this, but this is one of the offerings that we think can work. But you're right, I mean, our job is going to be to get that occupied, and there will be residential owner-occupied housing on that site. It's just, is this going to be it or not? I think is your question.
But you don't have this platform to work with on just the bare site. And you don't have this building to change.
So to wrap it up, we have our team here. Obviously, it's a lot of information to throw at you in a short period of time, but they're here available for questions. Again, our purpose and our pride of what we've done so far is we feel that we've really built on the history and reflect the history of the area and what we do as far as design, but yet also looking forward to tie it into what we have planned for the community and looking forward to innovation. So I think hopefully you'll see a combination of those two things. So put up for questions.
Break out for me, yeah, there's some desired, right, here's net increments of value that would be created over, right, a certain period of years, 5 years. Is there a certain value associated with R, and then a certain value with T, and then a certain value with the townhomes? And if so, what is that?
Kevin has that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Spreadsheets.
And I just want to pull up, so I'm talking the same numbers here. Roughly, it's split between about 12 million buildings in Fort Town. Let me just pull up those numbers. And what we estimated at, and I think it's just so you can see in terms of where we feel like comfortable coming in with those values.
Carrie. Carrie.
You have to open the door, sir. Thank you.
So what we had looked at as far as for the warehouses, once those are finished, we had estimated that once built out, they'll be about $90 a square foot, which is akin to what they are in the buildings south. They're probably trending a little bit higher, but we use $90 a square foot. So when all is said and done, the warehouse buildings, the improvement value of them will be about $9 million. Now that does not include the land underneath them. And townhouses, all in, we're anticipating about $275,000 a unit per townhouse. Now I know there's a little difference between the condo, corner condo with 3 units, they might be a little bit smaller, but then as Mr. LaPlante had stated, maybe an end unit might be a little bit bigger, have a 3rd floor, and then might be up to that, 330, 350 level. But all in, averaging about 275 townhomes, so that would be, with 20 townhomes over that period, 5.5 million. So if we take a look then, all in, we're looking at, for the project, about $16 million worth of value. Taking away that 4 base, that's where we get the 12 million increment to work from in terms of being able to pay off that debt service.
You have something?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. Crowder, when you started the presentation, you had said there were a couple of other attempts at development in the past, and of course, one of those was yours. And we had a development agreement with DDL, and so I'm just wondering what happened that you were not able to fulfill the obligations of that development agreement. What is different this time around, other than a much fancier presentation? And what reason would you have for us not to just put this out to an RFP and see what kind of proposals come in when you consider that the city's already had a cost of a payment on procuring cause, multiple payments on the property, selling it for less than the assessed value, and guaranteeing multiple loans?
Sure. So to answer your first question with regard to the first development agreement, and I'll let Kevin add some color to it as well, is we did have a development agreement in place. In December of 2015, we were approached by the city because of the situation with the financing to change the rules of the development agreement, to go from the previous development agreement had us purchasing it in parcels, and we were requested and see if we would purchase the entire property. And so that took a lot of time. And the turnaround time between both parties, I think, was I would say slow at times, but I think we did pretty well. I don't know if, Kevin, if you want to add a little more to that portion of the question.
Sure. So I think, as Mr. Kravitz had said, look, prior there was an agreement between DDL and OBI to basically buy off chunks. Once we saw that BMO was getting ready to call the note, look, BMO didn't have any interest in the land. They knew we were going to guarantee, so they're interested in the money. Once basically we had the guarantee assigned us the loan documents, we went for OBI and acquired the property. If we're going to owe the money, we want to have some type of asset for it. One of the concerns that the city had with the phased approach is that we would get to a point where, to protect the city, the developer would go purchase the choice parcels and leave us with all the stuff basically in the northeast corner that really wasn't as prime development land. And we couldn't agree to terms, I think, in terms of how do you structure, look, if you're going to buy off the corner of Kellogg and Broadway, how do you also take off then back by Mather, the new community shelter? I think we tried a lot of iterations of like defining what that would be, or then how much that would be worth, and those types of things. And it, look, in concept, I think it was a good idea, but in practice, it didn't work, I think, for either party, because then also when they're buying parcels on the north end, I mean, you can't just give somebody a parcel without any street access, so.
Wasn't that language already in the development agreement, though, that they would buy it in parcels, and if they were unable to make those payments in parcels, that at the end of the agreement, they would pay in full? I thought that was already a part of it, that they would buy the entire thing.
Correct, but there was no language as defining like what that parcel would be. It gave a monetary value of what it is, and I think our concern from the city was, look, you take that monetary value and you carve out Kellogg and Broadway, and you carve out the bill, and you start working your way down, and you leave us with all, you know, the less desirable land in the back. And that, for us, wasn't acceptable in terms of then we're really left with a hard piece. And, oh, we'd found a way to do something with it, but our encouragement then was, how can we also get the developer to take off the whole piece, which is, look, you buy a chunk by a certain time, and then buy the whole piece. I think the deadline was by December 1st of 2016. So in order to do that, we were kind of back where we were today, and then what is the right amount of increment that you need in order to provide the debt service to put in the infrastructure? The easiest thing from a development perspective would be, look, there's $5 million worth of infrastructure that needs to go in here to put in all the streets and the sewers and the stormwater and everything. And we could do this like many communities do their business parks, and like we just put it all in and then hope that the development comes to pay back all of that increment. I don't think that's a good spot to put the city in terms of the risk given, look, there may be some uncertainty in the market, and the time on the TID is not as long. Look, we're already 10 years into this TID in order to be able to pay that back. So how can we work on this phased approach in terms of being able to provide money up front to get the infrastructure, because the development can't happen without some of that infrastructure, especially when you're talking about those parcels in back with Donald Driver. So I think that was primarily the big negotiating piece of what projects do we have ready to go, what incremental value are they going to create in order then to provide enough increment to pay off debt service to get some of this infrastructure in. I think we probably, as we've mentioned, have talked about a number of projects. I think one that we thought we were far along with, the gap in terms of the incentive was just, it was too big. And there was no way we were going to be able to make that, or if we did, we basically did it at the sacrifice of future projects. And didn't think it was prudent to spend all our incentive more or less on one project and then not have anything else available for future. So I think those things were reasons why, in terms of DDL didn't make the, I guess, timelines in there. I think it's, look, as Mr. Kredowitz had said, in terms of communication going back and forth, it's not like we weren't working on it, and I think we were and have continued to work on, and I think, you know, since that agreement has expired, the good faith effort that both, I think, their team and our team has put on in terms of, you know, real time and money and engineering and those other things has shown, look, we both see this happening. That just the projects weren't in place at that time by those deadlines to actually come and sign an agreement. And I think that's why we're here today, probably, you know, 9 months after, I think it was December 1st. And again, it's been the same thing that we have been working on back and forth, and I think we're at a point now, again, and I think RDA has brought up before, comfortable for a project now versus also some assurances of what types of projects are going to be happening in the future.
And I think that, you know, I'm not going to speak for anybody on the RDA, but as a council representative, I think this question is going to come forward on why we wouldn't put this out to an RFP and see what kind of proposals come forward.
Sure, so I'll address that, and I think it boils down to our track record and our passion as local people and our commitment to downtown Green Bay and the city of Green Bay and northeast Wisconsin. I think we've proven that. And I think if you go back all the way to 1996, when Brett took the risk to start the depot, we carried that forward in 2013 through 2014. We took on the risk. We took on, you know, monetary risk. We took on a lot of business risk. And frankly, we're probably 3, 4, 5 years ahead of schedule. You'd be hard pressed to find another development that took 10-year abandoned buildings and turned them into a destination like we did. And I think, frankly, I think it would be disingenuous, because we've operated in good faith, not to allow us to carry that forward. I think we've earned that respect.
Just to follow up, I think where we're at in terms of, again, I think continuing to work in good faith. As far as reasons why not to, I mean, just what Mr. Kredowitz said in terms of their team of continuing to work on something because they feel, look, they've done it before, they're the ones who took the risk, and they're willing to keep taking the risk, doing things that they are now. I mean, they knew, like, going into this, doing some of this engineering, I mean, there's a risk involved, but they felt good faith that we would continue to advocate for that. With that, if council decides to say, nope, we're gonna go back out to RFP, you know, we're going right back to the drawing board, and look how long it took us with somebody like we knew versus somebody that we don't know. And look, as much as, you know, this area is growing, it's not like we have developers knocking down our door saying, can I have a piece of that property? And I think in transparency, and I've told them that if somebody came to the city with a legit offer to take the whole property or do some type of development, that I bring that forward for your consideration. That hasn't happened. We've had projects that maybe look at maybe a piece of it, but then again, you know, that really doesn't go to, I think, our primary objective of moving all of this acreage off of city ownership into private ownership. And those are some of the reasons I would argue against doing that.
And if I could just echo that, as someone who works very closely with Kevin, this is no secret, this property is, I'm going to call it an albatross, but that it's been something we've been trying to unload for some time. I mean, you know, the Walmart deal that we passed on, which was $9 million for all 16 acres, was very, very public. This thing has been marketed. Every developer that comes in knows, they always say, what property does the city own? And we're very upfront. This is what we own, and this is what we can maybe help you acquire. But that would just be a waste of time. And this is no secret that this property has been on here. We have been working in good faith, but at the same time, they know very well that we have talked about this to other developers, and this guy from Indianapolis that Kevin just talked about. And, nobody could get a project to work, so I would recommend we go this course.
Well, Mayor, you know as well as I do that questions are going to be asked, it's going to be brought up, you know, when it gets to the council floor and it comes time for that discussion. You're really just going to have to sell the council on it, and it's already been suggested before, you know, that, you know, I mean, even as of a few months ago, there were still some council members that thought there was still an active development agreement with you, and if that's the same perception that others in the community or other developers had with that perception, since the city has been working so closely with you throughout, you know, and I think that that's something that is going to have to be addressed. I mean, I've always been very fully supportive of downtown development, and I think I've got a pretty strong track record on the RDA and on the council of pushing and promoting these projects, and I'm certainly behind this, and I think that what you put up here is great, and I believe in you guys. I believe that you guys can get this done, but I know that, you know, there's going to be a lot of kickback as we move forward to actually getting it done, and especially with the ask of the public assistance.
Sure,
And,
no, I
you know,
agree.
so I think it's something you just need to be prepared for.
Yeah, and we talk internally too, even if we drew the line right here and this is where we stop, we're pretty darn proud of what we've done. We've actually taken the landscape of those buildings and changed it for a generation, but we also think we're not done yet. We can carry that forward. We have the energy and the commitment, again, to downtown Green Bay that we really want to keep it going. But I appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Question as much for Joe as anybody else on the mood of the council. If this was a development being proposed to us today in response to an RFP, would the mood be different, or is there concern or animus because there was a prior development agreement?
Hard to say. I guess I can't really speak for everybody. I just know that the suggestion's been thrown out about putting us on an RFP, opening it up to everybody. And I mean, it's had, I would consider some support, you know, to that suggestion being made. You know, look, all it takes is 6 votes in the support of the mayor, which I'm sure you have, and your track record, I think, justifies 6 votes. But like I said, I certainly can't speak for anybody else, but as a representative, I just want to make sure that you're prepared for these questions from forward, because I'm sure the floor will be opened up and these questions will be asked on the council floor as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Just one more quick, and it has nothing to do with the political mood. And Gary, you might be able to answer this. John, you might be able to. The big power lines that run through there, do those have to stay up, or can that be buried? Or am I just asking, like, oh, by the way, that's $10 million to do that?
Very, very expensive to bury. They're very high-level transmission lines, so anything can be done, but it'd be extremely expensive. I have no idea what the cost would be. Extremely expensive.
Right, the cost would be at least $1 million per pole.
How much?
$1 million per pole.
Per pole.
I thought it was 4 There's also the storm and sanitary running under in terms of moving. I mean, and there'll still be limitations to buildings above.
And, you know, as John was talking about too, is the design carries the down driver way, goes along the power lines, the roundabouts around the poles. We've worked with ATC on, you know, how you can build, what the easements are around that. Back in the corner where the retention pond is as well, that's where some of that comes through. So we're trying to they're there, they're not gonna go away. That's very expensive to remove them. So how do we design the development around them or with them as part of the development?
I got one more question too. Actually, this would be for our architect here, Mr. LaPlante, and probably Mao and Associates maybe as well, but are there floodplain issues in here, elevation issues? And is that taken into account when you consider the townhomes with the basements and the extra work and extra cost in doing that versus maybe going up another story?
And it was. John actually is more the representative on that, but we did research heavily groundwater levels, water tables, how high, you know, should we pop these out of the ground compared to should they be slab on grade because it's cheaper? I mean, we really did an extensive research on this, but John?
Yeah, we were surprised that over here, this guy is close to the river, but unlike the east side, doing pretty good as far as the floodplains over here. It's non-existent.
The 586?
Yep, correct. Good.
Okay. I'm in a neighborhood that's under 586, so when you drive down my street, you see vacant lot, house 30 inches higher than the next house, you know, throughout. So that would be pretty chopped up over here.
Harry, I have a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
So as we look at the aesthetics of like the townhomes, certainly the existing building are, you've got some documents put together, and Mr. LaPlante showed us some renderings. I mean, how finalized are those? Are those just concepts? Are those aesthetic details that would come back to the RDA as we move forward?
I think they're probably a notch beyond concept details. I don't know if you guys want to talk more to the detail of those.
The building R is actually in state review process right now for the demolition portion of it. We're expecting that back in the next week or so.
Yeah, I think that looks really nice.
Yeah, if you look at our building C and D as you come down Broadway, how we opened up all those windows, very similar, maybe even more.
To answer Ms. Parma's question, in terms of obligations of developer, starting on page 8, in terms of like the concept plan and construction documents, this will be like with the JBS site, will it be required to get approval from RDA for things? So I think, yeah, in terms of comments, if it's appropriate to do it now, or if you're good, I think that it's kind of an indication when they get approved. It should be pretty straightforward, like this is, and I think where they're at is what you see is what you get. I don't think there's anticipating, like you said, any big changes to it, so. But, you know, like the previous projects, what the RDA ultimately decides what's there. It's not a council thing, that's back with RDA. But I think, like they said, they're well ahead of the game and you know, could probably submit those
I guess my
today.
concern, and I guess my concern is really even more just with the townhouses, because certainly we get a lot of feedback and commentary, right, on residential coming downtown and, you know, making sure that that really is, you know, what the public's looking for, and that's the aesthetic, both from a, you know, vernacular of the area as well as, you know, looking forward to, you know, what that, you know, really from an aesthetic perspective. I think you're right on with the existing buildings. I get nervous when we start putting, you know, a whole new development. I think what Mao's put together here from a site plan perspective looks really nice. You know, some of the images might be a little deceiving because we don't see the vehicles in there with the garages, and so that's, I guess, just where my concern came
Right,
from.
and as Jim mentioned too, I think you're working with 2 or 3 clients, potential clients already for the townhomes, almost on customizing their design.
I'd like to comment on that too, if you don't mind.
Sure.
As far as the different ownership models, one thing that I hear every week on the street is there's very few ownership opportunities downtown. There's a lot of rental opportunities.
Yeah, we're all for that.
So, I mean, but that's the piece that's missing, right? So
Right.
there's
I'm all for the townhomes. I kind of am voice of aesthetics sometimes
Yes,
here on
that's good.
the council
That's good.
or on the RDA. And so I was just wondering, how locked in those were, or if those were just concepts. And, like you said, you're working with some, real clients. And so, because certainly there's a lot of buzz, right?
Yes.
When it comes to, we certainly hear it with the, residential facilities that have gone up,
Yep.
here
Yes,
on
we
this
have.
side of the river as well, so.
Okay. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Motion to return.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jeff,
Thank you, Jim.
ask for motion to return regular to business.
Did that.
Tom?
Second.
Gary, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Matt? Those in favor say aye. Opposed, carried. I assume we don't have to go into private,
I would recommend it in regards to number 3 with the guarantee.
Yes.
And if there's any other questions in 2, I think, as long as we're making sure we're taking both together, I think, like I said, in terms of the development agreement itself, staff feels we're pretty well negotiated unless there's something else that you want to see.
I was asking, would this be a 6-month development agreement?
No, this is the development agreement. So
Oh, it
this
is?
Not a planning
It's an
option,
option.
this moves construction project forward.
Okay.
Transfers.
So we're done with that.
So
And
this-
item 2 is contingent on number 3, so we
Correct.
actually need to approve 3 before 2 if we're going to do this, don't we?
Recommend. Yeah. Yep.
Number 2 is a recommendation.
And here, I do think we're going to go close, right?
Yep.
For number 3,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, since we joined them together, can item number 2 just?
They both have
discuss?
closed session notice,
Yeah.
so
So one closed session reading will cover them both.
I believe so.
Read your little,
I will do that, make a motion. Huh?
earn your money.
The authority may convene in closed session pursuant to section 1985 Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the sale of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business as necessary for competitive or bargaining reasons. The authority may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 1985 Wisconsin statutes to report the results of the closed session and consider the balance of the agenda.
Call roll.
And this is in regard to both items number 2
2 and
and
3.
number 3.
We need a motion or second?
That was the motion. That's the motion, no section, the second.
Okay. Second.
Then roll is called for a
Okay.
vote.
Harry Meyer?
Yes.
Gary Delvaux?
Yes.
Jim Bloomer?
Yes.
Alderman Joe Moore?
Yep.
Melanie Parma?
Yes.
Matt Schuler?
Yes.
Tom Walker?
Yes.
Okay, we are closed session.
People have to hear that.
Yes, please, oh, please.
Don't hold on too long, I'm leaving in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Battery
is dead?
Yeah, it is on my notes.
Yeah. That's a separate.
Yeah, so he did that in the
Vote to return regular business?
Yes, I'm waiting for Krista with the recorder.
Actually, it's going on camera. If you want to go ahead.
We're live, okay.
We're live.
Oh, we've been live, but it's anything inappropriate.
No, she just turned it on.
Okay. All right, back in, Harry Meyer.
Yes.
Gary Delvaux.
Yes.
Jim Bloomer. Alderman Joe Moore.
Yes.
Melanie Parma.
Yes.
Matt Schuler.
Yes.
And then Tom Weber asked to be excused at 4 PM.
During the closed session, the RDA members had very extensive discussion with members of the staff over terms of the sale of the property from RDA to DDL Holdings, and some incentives that we have developed, and they'll come out in the motion that is about to be given.
I'll make a motion first on item number 3 to approve the continuing guarantee with Hometown Bank for the rail yard project at 420 and 520 North Broadway, and to direct staff to research the second option that we discussed in closed session as a potential option for council review.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Jordan, second by Matt, and to proceed on those two actions. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
I'll make the motion toward item 2 for the approval of the development agreement with BDL Holdings LLC for the rail yard projects at 420 and 520 North Broadway, and to amend the agreement adding recital 5 is to include an additional 20 owner-occupied units by 2026.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Moore, a second by Alderman Delvaux, not Alderman.
And I think just to clarify, Alderman Moore, just so we get that on the record, the additional 20 units could be in an existing building, or they could be new standalone units, just
Right.
20
owner
livable
occupied
units.
somewhere. Okay, thank you.
That would provide for an additional 20 units in the project, either inside of an existing building or standalone. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. All right. Number 4, consideration of possible action on first amendment to development agreement with Beautification Company Incorporated for the redevelopment at 2280 East Mason Street, parcel 211261, East Town Cub Foods. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, everybody.
Chair, I'll have to be excused here for
Finance?
Yeah, personnel and finance.
We still have one.
Still have a quorum? So just note for the record, Alderman Moore, name and for please. All right, what we're looking for is to amend development agreement with East Town Cub Foods. In short, the two things that we're looking to do here is just adjusting the base value in terms of the difference between the 1.8 and 1.7, where the value actually came in at 2017. And then the second, or more important, would be to allow for this property to be included in a new TID. As we're going to discuss in item 6, making some recommendations, potential changes, modifications to our TIDs. As far as covering this project, it was approved with predication that we would expand the boundary of TID 10 to cover it. This amendment would allow us to either A, expand TID 10 like we had talked about before, or B, talk about a new TID in that area which would cover the Cub Foods and East Town Mall project. One of the things, and I'll talk a little bit more when we get into talking about the TIDs, it's something we discussed with JRB when we were reviewing performance of the TIDs last week. Also looking at in terms of where the East Town Mall property, I think as you know, the assessment had been challenged, and depending where that base value comes in at, if it comes in at a higher value, we may need more time than is available in TID 10 to make up our obligation that was discussed.
Sure.
So I think with this amendment, this allows us, at least for this project, to allow for it being part of TID 10 or being part of a new TID in the East Town Mall. All the other stipulations, terms and conditions of the TID remain the same in terms of it's a pay-go created, and if you've been out there, you see they're moving ahead, and this project will be on line 1/1 of 18 for sure. So with that, staff recommends making the requested changes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second then to proceed with the first amendment to the development agreement with Larson Company for the redevelopment of 2280 East Mason Street. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. All right, number 5. Right?
This one's 10.
Right?
Yes, all right. So in June, we put, I guess we're talking about the properties at 901, 907, and 913 Main Street. 901 right here is the RDA-owned property, and then we have 2 city-owned properties here. We put these out for RFP in June, and we received 2 proposals back. And right now, we're just recommending going forward with a 6-month planning option with GB Real Estate Investments to further develop a multi-story mixed-use building with residential, retail, and commercial uses. Skip ahead here. So this is what they are proposing to build here. That would be 20 units.
Would the whole building be commercial, or was there housing upstairs?
Yeah, the second and third floor are residential.
Housing?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, the first floor retail and commercial.
All right.
And actually Garrett Bader is here, if you guys wanted to open the floor to talk to him about the project.
This project?
Yeah, yep, GB.
I would like to hear from Garrett, so yes, I make a motion to open the floor.
Second. We have motions by Gary, second by Jim, then to open the floor for public discussion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Carried. Garrett, the floor is yours.
First and foremost, I have to say you guys proved the old fable right. It's great, because like if you're at a restaurant, you go to the bathroom, the food's not coming, all right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, the food will come while I'm gone. So out there, I'm like, I'm gonna go downstairs, charge my phone quick in the car, let's see if they worked. Thank you, happy to be here. Glad to present the proposal. In short, as Ken said, the idea is to do a mixed-use, 3-story building, proposed 20 apartment units, some degree of commercial on the first floor, could even be some residential on the first floor, kind of playing with some thoughts there. Underground parking, and overall something that nicely, I call it kind of like an infill project for Main Street. It would hold the setback, keep much of the same character that's there, hopefully blend a little bit of the old with some of the new. A big piece for me, part of this, and I think Krista had it there a minute ago on the slide with the connectivity element, and Harry will smile because he knows I'm working on some other connectivity initiatives. But I think being able to see and access neighborhoods is so important when we look at projects like this. So to be able to extend that sidewalk north to the eventual trail, I think is a huge part of this, and bridging that ability to bring different folks together. So right now you have the existing right-of-way up there north of Cedar Street. There is no right-of-way between Main and Cedar anymore, but I think something through either private or public rights-of-way that could accomplish that.
Garrett, what's your thought of when you'd like to get started on something like this?
I think the way I present in the proposal would be a request for some environmental clarity on that property, just knowing what I dealt with across the street for the townhouses. If we can have that here in the next month or so, and then we can start some of the permitting that process, be in a position to start next summer and then open it up in spring of 19.
Ken, what's the city's commitment in regard to this project?
We were looking at the environmentals, doing both phase 1 and phase 2 if we have to. And then there was discussion of possible cleanup if anything were to arise. So that would be something that we had to discuss for the development agreement though. So
what was there before?
Gordy's many years ago, remember Gordy's?
Gordy's Tavern? Yeah.
Many years ago.
Initially on...
Gary revealing a little about his past.
On the 901 Main Street property, we do have the environmental from 2006. The phase 1 that is showing that we don't have any further action required on that one. I'm still researching on the other 2 properties, so.
So are we just going to turn the property over to the developer?
It would be sold for $1 is what was proposed.
Okay. And what's the end assessment value?
You're looking at 1.75 million is what.
Yeah, right. So taking that rough percentage of cost, which seems to be kind of a magic number, about 65% of cost is usually where assessment seems to line up. In there too, Gary, I do request just to get a better estimate from the city assessment staff on what they estimate that to be.
And I think once we work down the path towards the development agreement, I mean, we'll have our assessor weigh in, look at plans, look at pro formas and rents, and basically project out where that's going to be coming in.
Right, so this is planning
Yeah,
option.
planning option.
Yep, planning option.
Okay, any other questions?
What's the length of the option?
6 months?
6 months planning option.
Okay. Make a motion back to regular order business.
Thanks, Garrett.
Thanks.
Second.
Motion by Gary, second by Matt. Return to regular business. Those in favor? Whoops.
There's somebody else. that wanted to
I'm
speak.
here to talk.
There we go.
Thank you.
Didn't see you back there.
Oh. Good afternoon.
My name's David Bartakovsky. I own the property at 900 Cedar Street, which is adjacent to those lots. And I'm going to show you, I've got plans and, well, you know what, first off, I'd like to start off by apologizing to Mr. Vonk and Mr. Ravinsky. Is that his name?
Yes,
Mr. Vonk?
that's correct. Yep.
Is that you?
That's me.
Oh, I've never met you, okay. I was a little taken aback. What happened, let me explain my side of this. Last night I was choosing brick and things of that nature. I was going through many catalogs because I was meeting this morning with some architectural garden developers, which is almost extremely difficult to get them to work with you during summer. You have a better chance of going to Mars than you do getting these guys to commit. But anyway, I did, and then before I went to bed last night, I checked my email, because I got an email about 5 o'clock in the evening, which I didn't check till 12 midnight, saying that they were going to give the option to Mr. Bader over here. And I was not aware of that, and I was really, had trouble sleeping last night because of it, because it has a huge impact on my property there, especially a 3-story structure, because I have an apartment on the 2nd level, and it's going to block everything. My proposal, though, which I submitted to Planning Commission over 4 months ago, was what you see before you. And my plan here, because we are considered the art district, I have others here I can,
There you go. Oh, there's some colored ones. Some colored ones right there.
my plan, we are considered the art district in that area there, and I do have artists on the 2nd level. I have a steampunk artist, Steve Bowles, and 2 photographers, so I'm a big supporter of the arts. And my idea was to build a green space so we can display sculptured pieces there and sell them, have art events, wine events, weddings, things of that nature, antique events there as well. The only thing I didn't have and was not able to provide you was the cost, and I do have some rough estimates. It's not going to be 1.7 mil. It's going to be about $125,000. And that's all. That's how, that's what I wanted to present you. So don't, it's not, I know we want tax dollars, I know we want to put buildings up everywhere. I also think there's also opportunity here to be the art district that we're called in the Main Street corridor there. So rather than just giving, this is the 2nd time I've tried to get that property. First time I was shot down because they didn't want, I was going to put a Belgian barn there and have an art display, architectural antiques there as well. Let me give a little history here. I started back in 1997, I had my first business downtown on Adams Street called Time After Time. I'm a clock and watch maker. And I was interviewed then, why downtown, David? Everybody's moving out of the downtown in 97. But I chose to stick it out because I am a downtown person. I love Green Bay. A building became available on Broadway. I bought that building over there, which is now Prohibition Spirits. I own that building. I kicked myself out of that building because they signed a 10-year lease with me. And nobody signs 10-year leases anymore. I bought the building over at 900 Cedar Street. I probably should have, before buying the building on Cedar Street there, I should have probably went before the city then and acquired that property next to me, but I'm kind of an idiot. I don't necessarily plan out everything as carefully as I should. But this is my 2nd time trying to acquire this property over there. I think I've done a lot for the city of Green Bay here. I developed, actually, maybe you don't know this and maybe you do, but I started the farmers market on Broadway on Wednesdays. I was instrumental in doing the Winterfest on Broadway, Pumpkin Palooza on Broadway, having the meters taken off on Broadway and putting signs up for parking, because I think it's a bad thing to charge people to park when you're in a retail district. So I'm I'm kind of old hat, I've been around a long time, and I'm just trying to develop this art community that we're talking about. I think putting up apartment buildings is not really an art community development. We're talking about a small piece of land there, which only has access from Cedar Street. You really can't come in from the Main Street area. My artist renditions were done by Dimension 4, Dan Rorty. He's a big supporter of this as well. I was let, you know, I want to be given this opportunity, a 6-month option, to develop this as well. Or instead of running and putting up apartments everywhere or buildings. You know, it is about green space as well, and the art district. Any questions?
I have a question. So there was 2 proposals to the RFP. Was this the other proposal, or is this a third?
This was the other.
This is the other proposal?
Yes.
Okay. And so then you said there was some sort of scoring system?
Correct. There was a 40-point grading scale. And I actually have the RFP here if you wanted to take a look at it.
No, I'm just, so in that 40-point
Yeah.
scoring scale,
Yep.
what did one receive, what did the other receive?
Actually, I don't have those numbers with me, but the GB real estate averaged in like the 33 out of 40, 34 out of 40, and this proposal, because there weren't any numbers or any other data other than the renderings.
I had a really difficult time getting numbers because it's almost impossible to get architectural developers that do gardening during summer. They just don't. Come October, I could have gotten 1 million of them out there. Right now, it's really difficult, but I did finally get a hold of somebody that was willing to give me a proposal on it.
This would be privately owned, this art thing?
It would be open to the public, but I would be selling art. I would be a broker for artists throughout the northeast Wisconsin area that do large sculptings. Has anybody ever been up to Orchard Gallery up in Door County? And you're walking through and there's all these art pieces, large art pieces that are displayed there very well and are sold privately. So yeah, this would be a private venture, but it would be open to the public. There would be access from the sidewalk, so you can come in anytime, you can go eat your lunch there, you can walk around that area there and look at art. We're planning on having art shows there. Those walls that you see, we're planning on putting paintings displayed out there. We're planning on doing weddings. If you wanted to have a wedding there, you'd be able to have a wedding there or a private party. I think it's a great, you know, it's kind of the gateway going into Green Bay right there. You have 40,000 cars that go right through that Greyhound bus station right there. And it would be a great addition to people that are coming into the area to have an art park like that and to show them the different artists that we do have in the northeast Wisconsin area. And we've got some great artists out here. We really do that have trouble marketing. Biggest problem with artists, they have trouble marketing themselves.
So you own this parcel?
I own the 900 parcel, yes. That's the gray building right there. The one in the picture, that's the one, yeah. Now I redid the inside of that building. I haven't touched the outside yet. My plan is, I've been struggling with this for 2 years now. I'm going to take that ugly gray paint off of my building. And I finally found a product that will remove the paint because I want just a plain old brick building. We're going to restore it on the outside. And if I could show you, I don't have the pictures to show you what the cobblestone pathways would look like, but they're very, very beautiful, very tasteful. I think it'd be a great addition to the area.
So both these projects are on the same site?
Yeah.
They're proposals.
Right there, where's the RFP?
Where the blue is there, is that?
The blue is owned by the RDA.
Yeah, that's the site we're looking at.
That, along with the city site next to it.
And so Ken, what did the garden concept score?
We were unable to actually score it because it didn't meet all of the, basically there wasn't enough submitted to even.
Well, he estimated about 175,000.
Right, as far as for the RFP scoring though,
Right.
for the 40
Yeah.
points on the RFP, so.
That, I think that Ken was referring to in terms of things that, criteria for scoring about the project, talking about structural improvements, incremental property value, looking at the developer, technical capability, financial, just other things that the team just didn't have information available to score. So basically we rated it inefficient or insufficient in terms of being able to put a score to it.
I would like to think that my background, being in this city here and in business in this city since '97, and owning two buildings, being instrumental in establishing a lot of things that the community has grasped. The farmer's market is huge, if not, probably close to the first largest market in the state of Wisconsin now, and I'm very proud of that. Very proud of it.
So what about the property to the west?
That is owned by, it was just bought, that was by Mrs. Bow, and they're going to, it is for rent. She has it up for rent right now. And it's kind of an eyesore for me right now, because it's not taken care of very well. And there's weeds coming to the cracks and everything is driving me nuts, but you know what, I gotta take care of my property and that's what I gotta focus on.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to be, I'm here today to be given at least an opportunity, because like I said, this is twice I have tried to acquire this property. Yeah, and there's always a roadblock, and tell me what it is that you guys need for me to acquire this, and I'll do it. I'll jump through hoops for you. But I think having this would be a great addition to the city of Green Bay. We have a tendency to want to put building after building after building in here. And I think this is a great opportunity for the city of Green Bay. It's a great gateway property. They can see the artwork. You can visit it at night if you want to. And it's a way to, we're always, and I've even presented it to the Arts Council. I went to a meeting there too. Everybody loved this idea. I just don't want you guys to make a decision here, putting another building up instead of really looking at this and considering this. Give me some consideration on this, because I think it's a great project for the city of Green Bay here. And I'm all about the community. My history shows that. I've done a lot of things for the community. I was on the Green Bay Homeless Task Force. We got the Micah Center opened. For years, I've been involved in this community. And I'm proud to say that I am a member of this community. I think it's a great community. I think it's come a long ways from when I first started, from when I first moved here in '97. I fell in love with the place immediately. I came home and told my wife, when I was looking at that building on Broadway, I said, that looks like Mayberry to me. And she was from here, so she was telling me, I'm not from here, but she was telling me, oh, that's the worst place in the city of Green Bay. And I said, no, it's not. I said, that place has potential. And now look at it today. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Make a motion to go back to regular business.
Motion to return to regular business.
Second.
By Jim? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
And
What do you
I'm
think?
so-
Can we delay this a month to give him another kick of the cat, or? would
Well,
you
I
like-
think, the reality is we put out the RFP.
Right.
So we went through, staff went through the process of putting out the RFP.
Right.
They got 2 responses, and their recommendation based on the scoring system is the GB real estate investment option.
Right.
And it is a
So-
planning option.
Right.
It's not final approval, so
Right.
it's got to come back when the final planning is complete.
Well, I'll get it off dead center. I'll make a motion to consider a 6-month planning option with GB Real Estate Investments LLC.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then to proceed with the funding option with Green Bay Real Estate Investments. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I just wanted to make one comment now that this one is done, and fully support it. And Garrett, you've done a lot of things in the community, and I forgot the gentleman's name, and he laughed. I thought his idea was really cool. And what I was going to say before he left was, hey, Garrett, if you run into this 6 months and you're like, nah, this isn't going to work, whatever reason comes through, what I was going to say is, hey, let us know. I'm open to considering that idea. I love the property value that you're generating in doing that, and that would win out for me. But if you're going through your due diligence and you say, this is not going to work for whatever reasons, or, hey, there's a better site for me to do this somewhere, and I'd rather do it on, let us know, because I'd be open to considering the other project as well.
More than that, or, you know, if you look at the site plan that I had here, there's space kind of between the ramp that takes you down to the underground parking in his building. It's kind of dead space, really. Maybe that, you know, one more back, or back, Krista, one more. There we go.
Right.
Yeah, that, I think that's something that can be discussed, and I hope that he's open-minded to that, because you see my sidewalk on the west side of the building that I do want for that connectivity to the trail. And I need his support on that too. And I think this would help clean up his parking lot and make his building honestly even more attractive and visible than it is now. So hopefully he's willing to talk. I think we can figure something out.
That's all I was gonna say, it's near neighbors, so you need to work together. Yeah, good idea.
Okay, let's move on. Number 6, consideration of possible action on a resolution designating the Redevelopment Authority to perform all acts necessary for the following tax income and finance district kids.
So
Not quite sure how to interpret that one, but.
I just read them all.
That was speed reading.
Gotcha. All right, we'll play the tape slow like the Beatles record next time.
That's
Review it,
backwards.
right? No, sorry. Your question?
So this is, the action is not on the closure, expansion, creation. It is just on making a recommendation designating the RDA to perform these acts.
Correct. So by state statute, in order to look at creating, amending, changing, dissolving TIDs, it is through our Plan Commission. We have in the past designated RDA to be the authority acting in place of Plan Commission, given that the RDA is generally then a party to a lot of these development agreements. So, for example, the last one we did 2 years ago for University Avenue, basically council designated RDA to be the authority to do that. What we're asking for today is for RDA to recommend that council pass these resolutions in order to make these actions for these TIDs. I wanted to just quickly, I know time is late, walk through what's anticipated with some of these. All of these may not happen, but I think it is behoovant of us, look, in terms of getting a timeline done, we have to, if we're going to have impacts to the TID effective 1/1/17, we need to have everything done by September 30th of this year. So with that, the proposal would be that at the next council meeting, council designate RDA as the authority to do these actions. With that, we would put together project plans for the new, or just some documents relating to each of these actions. We would look at having a JRB meeting the last week of August, Tuesday, the 29th of August. With that, one of the things is, we don't have to decide at this moment, but to get on the calendar a public hearing time then that week after the JRB meeting, it could be later that night or Wednesday or Thursday of that week. That would allow us to get these to council in September for their meeting, have JRB meet and submit everything by the 30th of September in order to make these effective.
So I'm a little confused because, okay, so now we're going to be the administrative body for these actions, when in fact we otherwise would be involved in some of these actions individually, such as the expansion of a TID that would have otherwise come back here.
Generally goes through Plan Commission. By our state statute, it's Plan Commission that is the designated body for public hearings or other actions.
I was thinking that was here.
So we've asked for, in the past, council has designated the Redevelopment Authority as the one to hold, in essence, I mean, it comes down to holding the public hearing. And I mean, it's create all acts, but really, I mean, the piece of it that you need legislatively and by statute is the public hearing. And that is what we are looking for.
Yeah, maybe I'm confused because you have to declare a certain portion blighted, right, in order to, so maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Correct, and what we've been looking at for some of these is probably not blighted, but maybe the conservation rehab district that we had talked about, that we used for University Avenue. I think there's opportunity, and I'll get into it, I mean, to do these as mixed use, but you're dealing with only 20 years then, it's a little shorter time period.
So we're becoming the administrative body to perform
The acts for these.
acts for these.
Correct. I'll just quickly go through, one, so just go through the resolutions. One would be the potential closure of, Diana had to go to finance, otherwise she could be here and provide some more information. And I will send out, we just had our joint review board meeting where we presented basically our findings for year-end 2016, where our TIDs were at. I think, just in summary, we talked about TID 16 as probably the trough in terms of performance, as in we have a lot of obligations, but those projects haven't all necessarily come online yet.
TID 6.
Yes. So for TID, and I'm talking about all these, but so for TID 6, that is the near east side, more or less the Navarino neighborhood. What we'd be looking to do is potentially close that TID. There's not been a lot of activity there in terms of more projects. I think, initially RDA was involved with NeighborWorks and some others in terms of getting some projects moved along. But there hasn't been a lot of other development there. We've talked about, for the Whitney School project, potentially expanding TID 6 or TID 11 Main Street to include that parcel, which I'll get to in a moment. But we feel, just given the time frame right now, in order to close it, we have about $275,000 worth of obligations that are out there. There's about just under $100,000 in the fund balance. It would cost us about $175,000 to close that TID.
Whereabouts is it, Kevin?
TID 6 is the near, I should have brought the map on here. It's the near east side. It's the Navarino neighborhood, more or less.
Do the new townhomes, are they within that area, Kevin? Because we're putting 5 townhomes on the roll.
Yeah.
Once they're complete.
They are not.
They're not in that.
It's
okay.
basically between Monroe and Quincy. It goes a little further
Okay.
over once you get up towards Main
So
Street.
that'd be a great
But it is not.
opportunity, but okay, doesn't
No,
include that.
otherwise, yeah, that's one of the things that we looked at.
Okay.
And I'll just go through these maybe a little out of order. The other two closures would be TID 10, or I'm sorry, TID 11, which is Old Main Street. That TID, I'm just doing the numbers, is distressed. It does now meet the criteria for a distressed TID. It is under, it's more than a 10% loss since the base value was created. And it's been that way for 2 years. So primarily account of, look, in terms of timing, things have gone offline. The city has acquired additional properties for expanding the East River Trail. The school district has been involved in acquiring additional properties, on that, taking them off the tax rolls. Look, those are all good things in the economic scheme of things, but just from a pure property tax perspective, they probably couldn't have come at a worse time. And those will lead to eventual development because there's more people there and more activity there. That's still off yet.
So it's a distressed TIF, and under the distressed category, you can't extend the life of the TIF, right?
Correct. So one of the things, and I'd be looking for a little direction here, is that we could close the TID. It's less in value. Right now, there's about $363,000 in outstanding obligations. There's only about $31,000 left in the fund balance. That fund balance will be underwater within the next year or two, just because of the declining values. So all in, it'd be about $330,000 to close, if we wanted to close it. The other option is we could do an amendment to declare it distressed and either extend or reestablish the base value. So basically, we could go in and say, look, today is the base value. That TID goes until, got all the sheets here. If you wanted to go that route, we could just do a reevaluation of it and either keep it at the same expiration date or extend it. That TID is set to expire in 2032. So it's about 15 years, which, like, it's still enough for some projects to get through, but it's going towards the end. If we did extend it, I'm sorry, if we did reevaluate it, then that might be one that we would look at for including the Whitney School project within, instead of creating a separate TID.
A property owner today, hearing about this, asked me if we could ask the city to better understand the pros and the cons in hopes that it would not be closed.
Sure. We have to do, look, in my opinion, we have to do something, because right now, because the current valuation is lower than the base valuation, we cannot give any incentive. I mean, unless we have a $15 million project that brings us $5 million out of the hole and start creating incentives. So even if somebody were to come here, we can't offer anything because we're underwater. So with that, either doing the reassessment or closing it down with then the thought of, look, when there is a project ready and in the queue, we could look at potentially a new TID for that specific area and or project.
So to me, the big question is what funds the difference between the project cost that was paid for and the fund balance? That goes to both 6M.
Yep, and 15. The reason that what we would look at is a donation from TID 12.
Okay.
And it would be a project plan amendment to do an allocation amendment. The value all in, and just to get to, let me come back to this, to 15, which is Old North, basically everything north of University, west of Webster. Within that TID, because properties have gone offline, either the RDA has acquired them, I mean, some of those are back in private hands now, or have been torn down. That's about $100,000 in terms of cash balance in the whole. There's only about 4,000 of obligations out there, I mean, just minor stuff. So it'd be $112,000 to close. So with those three, it'd be about $700,000. We would recommend a donation from TID 12, which has ample funds to do so, to be able to close those out.
I-43.
I-43.
It's all those folks in the business part carrying the load.
That's right. Yeah, no question, no question, man.
Your tax bill didn't go up, it just goes different places.
Well, and I think that's one of the things in terms of, look, in going down this process, it's not making the decision on it yet, it's to have the resolution to authorize us to kind of go down that road of having the discussion. I think one of the things we wanted to look at in terms of, when we pitched this to the JRB about some of these ideas, I think, in terms of the donation of TID 12, you're looking at a cost benefit of, for some of these, do you stop the bleeding before it gets too bad, and then you wait until the end of the TID, and then you have to repay it with the levy versus another TID. And I think that's a situation that we want to avoid, that, look, if we can do an inter-TID transfer, that keeps it, look, I mean, it's already off kind of the TID pool, that it's not, you're avoiding an impact on the levy and trying to see, looking at projections, is there one where you want to stop it now versus writing it out? Like, for example, TID 6, if you let it ride out its term, it'll come back, I mean, it'll be fine, it's just, do we want to kind of hold off that long? Or is it better for us to kind of get that increment back to everybody's tax rolls right now? So that was with the old Main Street, and I think, look, I think the important thing should be, like, we want to do something about it, because then that helps the businesses on Old Main Street, because the situation we're in right now is not good. So, yeah, so closing potentially 6, 11, and 15, with then the expansion of TID 10, which would be coupled with then potentially the creation of TID 20, which is East Town, East Mason. Right now, we have a term sheet, or we have a development agreement for Cub Foods. We just did the amendment. That project is moving forward. In order to pay for those expenses, we talked about doing TID 10. The amendment today says we can do it TID 10 or a new TID, which we'll call TID 20. East Town Mall has a term sheet, but does not have a development agreement. That is something that we are still negotiating and still working on. There's been a little bit of change. I think the library's made it clear, like, they're not going to be renting a space there. And so I think that changes a little bit the dynamics that we said, putting in money up front was for a public amenity and a public facility. So if they come back, how is it going to be different in terms of that allocation? The one thing, and we inform the developer of this, is if, and I guess the second deals with the assessment, And in terms of whether that assessment comes in at 3.1 million like they wanted, or it comes in at 7 million like our assessor's office has argued for. If it comes in at that 7, I mean, they'll still create the increment, it's just gonna take, it's not as much increment, so it's gonna take a longer time to pay that back, so you would need a newer TID to be able to recoup that.
So Jim,
So that was not settled at this year's,
And Diane's not here, my understanding, it went right into circuit court. It bypassed our board of review and went right into circuit court. And to my knowledge, I don't think we've had, I know you have to stay out of it, but it has not, to my knowledge, been settled yet.
Okay.
If we are to create a new TID there, the only reason we would do so is if there is a development agreement for the East Town Mall. We can't put the city in a place where we have a TID, and for some reason, they tear down the mall and it goes down in value. So we have to have some sort of agreement. It may not be a full-blown development agreement, but at least an agreement to maintain the base value of whatever it is, so we don't lose that if we create a new TID.
So in the interest of time, Jim, what's your motion going to be in your number 6 here?
oh, I'm fine with closure.
I mean, you're fine with all these
Oh,
recommendations?
item number 6 or? TID
No,
number
no,
6?
yeah, all of them, yeah.
Yeah, so really it's, I'll make a motion to recommend that council designate the RDA to perform the acts necessary for the TID districts identified, yeah.
It's fine. I'll second it.
Right, we have a motion and a second then to accept the recommendations of staff on the 8 TID districts as outlined. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Wonderful. Number 7, consolidation of possible action on the request by the Green Bay Public Arts Commission to allow the use of parcels 362 and 363 for the placement of public art via the rotating public arts program.
So you recall, earlier this year, you gave us permission to place 2 of these 5x5 pads on New Hall and 1 on 12.
Right.
Well, our prices are actually coming in a little lower because we're working through Public Works to do a project, so we're able to do additional pads for the rotating arts program. We have a property, we are located on Seymour, in the Seymour neighborhood on West Walnut, across from that is the Taco Burrito Mexico, I think, right there in West Walnut. And we'd like to place a piece of public art in that spot.
Good
So
idea.
we'd do the same agreement that we did before with the legal department and the whole on this.
I would
Motion?
make that motion.
Matt, motion, second by Gary. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Good job, thank you.
Yes.
Number 8, consideration possible action on request by Alderman Zima to purchase both 503 South Ashland Avenue and 720 North Broadway using neighborhood enhancement funds.
This is me. We've been
Gotcha.
working with Alderman Guy Zima. This is a package deal. 503 South Ashland is the property on the very top to the left. You can see to the right in the map the location of that. 720 North Broadway is the property on the bottom left-hand, and then the subsequent map. It is a package deal. The Ashland property is located in the shipyard area, and the Broadway property is located in the
Is that
railroad.
house right on the corner of Ashland?
No.
No, it's right next to the tracks.
Right next to the railroad tracks.
Oh, yeah.
coming through.
Okay.
It's right
Right.
next, right next to
Yep, yep.
those. And as you'll see a little bit later on in the slides, the 720 North Broadway is right across the street from, this is a before picture, the adopt-a-home build that we did.
We bought that,
We
tore it
bought
down.
that, we tore it down, and this is what it looks like now.
Oh, wow.
So that's the new green belt.
That's the new green build that we
And this
did.
is directly across the street
This is
from
right across
the
the-
property we want to buy.
Yeah.
So you tear them down and build a
So with
Actually,
Ashland, with Ashland, it's located in, there's this slough area, so it's a floodplain, so we gotta figure out what exactly we wanna do there.
Okay.
If we cannot rehabilitate 720 North Broadway, we would like to do something similar to what's across the street now, so that's our.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of 503 South Ashland and 720 North Broadway for $79,900 using neighborhood enhancement funds.
Well, how much is in that fund? We have good balance?
We are gonna have to go to the state trust fund for this one.
Yeah, I've got about $500,000 left in
Yeah.
the account, so.
We have 500,000.
Okay.
So.
You have a motion, second?
I'll second.
Second by Melanie. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 9, consideration of possible action on awarding contract CD 1702, Part A, sidewalk and pavement repairs, and Part B, alley resurfacing to the low qualified bidders.
Move to approve.
Yep, yep. Second.
Well, how do you know who it is?
It's smart tell, it's
Yeah.
a
Second. We have a motion and a second then to approve the action on that contract. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 10, consideration possible action on pre-approval of contract CD 1703 Perkins Tennis Courts to the low qualified bidder with CDBG funding not to exceed $150,000 to play tennis. Holy, right down low.
Well, this was part of the 2016 park allocation. DPW has just had the time to bid these tennis courts out. But it's falling in between our August meeting and our September meeting, and we kind of have a deadline of spending these 2016 funds. So in order to expedite the process, the budget was $150,000. They anticipate everything coming in above $150,000, but they will make up the rest of it with park funding. So you would pre-approve to the low qualified bidder once those bids come in, and not for CDBG funding not to exceed $150,000. That's what we're requesting now.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Melody, seconded by Matt. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 11, consideration of possible action on a request by staff to transfer economic development funding from EDLMI benefit budget to the commercial facade and demolition grant program.
Matt?
That's me, and I'm the guy keeping you from the door, so I'll be very brief. We are out of money with our facade and demo grant program. So we are requesting a transferal from our EDLMI benefit budget, about $55,000 to put into our commercial facade and demo grant program.
So move.
Motion by Gary, second by
I'll second it.
Melanie to consider the action on the economic development funding program. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Bills, consideration of possible action on the acceptance of financial report.
So moved.
Motion by Matt, second by
I'll second that.
Melanie. Those in favor say aye.
I haven't been here in a while.
That's great.
Do we need a report from you, Kevin, or we heard enough from you today?
That's up to you. I'll just report, we are still here, and we're still working, so.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
What's happened to the barracks?
The barracks have gone quiet.
Yeah.
You know, I've ran into Mr. Olson a few times. I don't know in terms of, they're just kind of like taking a little break from the project and resetting. I don't know if they're waiting to kind of see what happens in the rail yard here, and then in terms of those projects, or where it may come out. You know, our understanding, look, I think we've got those properties still on the market, out of respect. You know, we don't have a planning option with that barracks team anymore, but out of respect, if we would get something new to come through, I think we notify them and just let them know that there's additional interest.
I haven't talked to them at all lately for quite a while. I have no idea what.
Pound the gavel.
Pound the gavel. Adjourned.
Great. Thank you.
One time.